Alright guys, and I'm pretty happy about this. So I looked around my apartment, couldn't find any IDE hard drives. Like I said, I had no reason to bring one here with me to Denver because this is the only computer that's in this apartment that is going to use IDE. Everything else here uses SATA. I talked to my sister in St. Louis and I had her go into my one of my rooms there and look around, and I found a couple of IDE hard drives, but you know, I wasn't really sure what was on them and I wasn't sure what I wanted to risk mailing and that kind of thing. Then I decided to just look online and see how much an IDE hard drive actually costs in 2020. And turns out it's actually not that much. It really would not have been very much cheaper to have one of those drives mailed to me. It certainly would have cost me a lot more gas money, a ton more money to drive back to St. Louis than it did just to order an IDE hard drive online. Now, Amazon actually told me that this wasn't going to get here until Thursday, and today is currently Tuesday. So, not sure what's going on with Amazon's logistics, but I'm happy that it got here early, so I was not planning on continuing this video today, but I've still got the computer sitting out. The sooner that I get it all cleaned up and put back together so it's not just sitting here disassembled on my desk or my counter anymore, since this is a counter, you know, and not a desk, sooner we get it back together, the better. So here is the IDE drive I got. It's a Hitachi drive, which I don't normally buy, but these were available new. Hitachi is one of the only companies still selling brand new hard drives, and like I said, it was very cheap. Aside from this, you can see the model number there. The rest of the options were probably more expensive and used, and they were more expensive because they were no longer being produced. This one is still so cheap because it's extremely old technology, but it is still in production, so we're just lucky enough to not be in that phase where it's rare, because that drives the value up when people aren't making them anymore. So we'll just cut that open there. And this is a 7200 RPM drive. Just to recap, if we take a look at the Seagate drive that came with the thing, that was 80 gigabytes. And I don't see an RPM on here. I might be able to look it up by the serial number or something. But yeah, I don't actually see an RPM written on there. But this new drive, 7200 RPM, I believe it's 250 gigabytes. It might be something like 270. I think it was 250. So we'll set that over there. Take the foam off. The bag is a little bit inflated here. We will tear this anti-static bag. Oh, that failed. Alright, anti-static bag is open. Here we go. So it's a Cinema Star drive. So we can see it is capacity 250 gigabytes. And like I said, you know, a lot of times when I clean up old computers, I never touch them again. This one's a little bit different. I don't have a lot of closet space here because I am in an apartment. I've got some closet space, but this thing is going to be sitting actually on my counter for a while. And so I'm thinking I'm going to try and use it for music, just as sort of a jukebox. Now, I mentioned before, by the way, that this thing did not come with the Apple Pro speakers that I thought it might come with. I actually went online onto eBay again, which is always a dangerous thing to do. But I looked around and I found what I think is a pair of pretty good looking Apple Pro speakers. And I did also confirm that there should be a built-in speaker on this iMac G4, but from what people were saying online, it's not that great of a speaker. So if I'm going to be using this thing as a jukebox, people go through great lengths to actually get those Apple Pro speakers. They use a sort of proprietary 2.5 millimeter connection rather than the standard 3.5 millimeter connection that you normally find on audio devices. People go through a lot of work to actually hook those things up to modern day computers and continue to use them because they were very good sounding speakers for their size and that kind of thing. Obviously, they're still desktop speakers, they don't have a subwoofer, but considering what they are, they apparently did their job very well. So yeah, that's the plan for this thing right now. I'm gonna see if we can make ourselves sort of a jukebox setup. And that's going to hopefully be what we do with this. But right now, I'm excited to get this hard drive in here and to see, just confirm, was that the issue? Are there more problems with this? Is there a problem with the motherboard, or you know, and/or GPU or whatever else? that is keeping this thing from booting, or is this new drive going to get rid of the hanging gray screen that we saw, and will we be able to just install macOS and use the machine, which would be beautiful if we could do that. So we'll go ahead and set this in here. Still got the screwdriver and everything. It was just a day or two ago when I recorded the last segment. I will say this would be a little bit easier if I did have an appropriate screwdriver head. Like I mentioned before, it's a 6-sided shape on the head of the screw that they decided to use here. And then I'm using a triangle screw head in there, so it's only connecting with half of the points that it could be connecting with, which is making it difficult to get started here. There we go. Once it's started, it's easy enough to turn and tighten and everything. Just hard to get it lined up like that. Alright, so I've got all 4 of those screwed in, and the cage actually does hold the hard drive, or at least this hard drive, a couple millimeters above the metal that it's kind of sitting on top of, which is good because it cuts down on reverberation that you hear. It doesn't transfer the reverberation, the vibration of this drive to the rest of the system and to your furniture as much. So at this point, I'll go ahead and stick on, I'm not sure why this white label was on the drive. Really not sure. It obviously wasn't for branding because Apple had an Apple logo on their original drive anyway. But this sticker was stuck on above the drive cage because there are no screw holes in the sticker, and it does cover the screws up a little bit. I'll just sort of stick that on as straight as I can here. Okay, so there's our label on top. Theoretically, this might prevent the drive from conducting any electricity if there was any kind of electric shock that were to go through the system, because there's other metal components in here and metal casing. Yeah, not 100% sure why that label's there, but I will give Apple the benefit of the doubt and say that an engineer put that there for a reason. So at this point, I'm going to plug in the drive back here. That was another reason I mentioned a couple times the SSD thing. It would have been really cool to get an SSD into a Power Mac and see just how much it can speed things up. Other people have done it before. It's not like I would be the first person doing that or anything. However, the SATA to IDE adapters online, there's only really a couple models out there, and the more prevalent model, I had a lot of people online saying that they are very poor build quality and they fall apart really easily, and that you need to be really careful with how they're mounted because of that. And then there were also some other models that seemed a little bit more reliable, but I wasn't sure what their compatibility would be with Macs and with PowerPC architecture systems. So yeah, we're just going with the standard IDE hard drive. It's going to be not any slower, probably faster than the drive that was in here in the first place. It is larger, and it is also brand new, which should also help. All right, and I do need to kind of turn this whole thing because the DVD drive is, there we go. Just needed to get that IDE connector into the back of the DVD drive. You can barely see it right there at that angle. So that is all of the servicing that I was planning to do on this thing. Not gonna replace the thermal paste or do anything like that right now. We are going to set this drive assembly back into the system. If I can figure out where it was exactly. I'm not sure. Yeah, I think that the DVD drive IDE power connector, I don't think that is right now where it was when I started. Boy, that is really tight. Trying to unplug it. There we go. All right, yeah. Let me run these wires on top of the drive. That will cut down on a lot of strain that was going on there. I didn't realize I was doing that when I plugged the other. I forgot that all the power cables are daisy chained because we're back in the early 2000s. Let's see, yeah, no, this should be the side that the DVD drive is kind of poking out of. So that's correct. I'm trying to figure out what screw holes are going to be in play here, because I don't see how this is gonna, oh, did this screw into the top here? That's probably what happened. All right, so the trick up here is you want to line up the door of the optical drive and then push the rest of the assembly in. Okay, and here we've got our 4 long screws that are gonna hold this. I'm gonna start with my hand here. Like I said, it's a little difficult just when the bit is trying to come off of it so much. But we've got 4 long screws and 2 short screws, which I took out earlier. And by the way, while I was editing the footage, since I thought I wasn't going to get this hard drive until later this week, I went ahead and started the editing. And while I was doing that, I think I figured out where the extra pieces from our keyboard came from. And it's actually not too far into the keyboard. It's only the first layer of disassembly for that keyboard. So I think we are going to open that back up in a little while, and we are going to go ahead and complete the keyboard. I really don't think it would have caused any problems having those things missing, but it'll just be good to know that they are all there. So we'll do that a little bit later. I want to give you guys a break from the keyboard stuff because I know there was a lot of keyboard stuff. All right. Had some concerns about how this was fitting back into the case, but I think we are good here. All right, 3 of those are in very securely. The 4th one here, I'm trying not to over tighten. Oh, there we go. I just had a little bit more to go. Perfect. And we've got 2 shorter screws up at the top under this foil. All right, and those are in. So now we can lift the bottom of the computer back up here, taking one last look around. Hopefully we didn't unplug anything critical for the wireless or for the rest of the system. I think we're okay. So we want to line up the ports with the labels in the back over here that I'm looking at right now. Especially the power cable is the thickest one there, so all right, so I think there's going to be a little bit of pressure here, especially because of that foil. So we'll go ahead and start screwing these 4 screws back in that we're holding the I keep grabbing my actual regular screwdrivers, and we're still dealing with the weird bits here. But we'll get the front of the case first, and we'll put the inner bottom back on. I think this is where these screws went. Nope, in the corner. All right. You only get the highest researched and most professional step-by-step tutorials here at Nerd on the Street. So we'll do corners here, try and get this thing. I still see a big gap there on the bottom edge. So yeah, just hoping this thing, I want it to look nice when we put it back together. I want it to look like it hasn't been opened up and serviced. Okay, so I'm going to hold that part of the case down. All right. Yeah, I'm hearing noises that I normally don't like to hear when I am screwing and unscrewing electronics. But we are going to power through it. It's just a 15-year-old system. What could possibly break? And that one felt much better. And here's the second front screw. Okay, so those are those 4 screws back in. Doing the best I can here with my angling. And so here's the other bottom panel. And here's where that foam was falling off. But we will just try and orient this. So this is the front of the machine. I think the Apple logo should go that way. I'm gonna double check on that too. All right, so the bottom of the Apple logo was pointing toward the ports here. So that's the direction that we'll put this on. Just gonna line up those screw holes once again, and we'll stick that on. So here, we're back to the Phillips screws. So we will grab another screwdriver, and we will stick this right back on where it came from earlier. If that's lined up at all. Yep, there we go. So the keyboard, they had Twerks on the outside and Phillips on the inside. But for the Mac, they had Phillips on the outside, Twerks on the inside. That's not very consistent of them. All right, and I did have to kind of hold the case down to actually get those screws, yeah, to go in where they're supposed to be. So then we'll do the side here and the other side. Ah, there we go. It wasn't popped on all the way. That'll help. All right, so yeah, you want to push it into the machine first, then screw it in. Okay, so there is the bottom of our machine. So hey, we got some dust out, replaced a drive, hopefully didn't knock any RAM around or unplug any antennas. So I'll lift this machine right back up. And our display mechanism, let me zoom out. Display mechanism still functioning as intended. This is a very neat machine, guys. I love this, how this display is mounted. Yeah. Making sure I didn't damage the display with how I set it down, because my microfiber cloth was just barely big enough. It was kind of sitting on the bezels of that plastic, but not covering the entire thing, as you can see. But looks like we're good. So at this point, the drive that I just installed should be blank. First thing I want to do is turn the machine on. We should get no more gray screen. We should just get a plain old no OS found icon. If PowerPC Macs even had those, which I thought they did. So let's move our keyboard and mouse out here. We'll plug that USB in, we'll plug the power in. Okay, let's power this thing on and see what happens now. I think I hear that new hard drive spinning up. So here's our blank screen. Excellent. I'm gonna turn the lights off so you guys can see that without the glare. Perfect. All right, so this is, like I said, exactly as I predicted. It booted up right to this little logo, an icon of a finder, and then a question mark. It can't find its OS files. And this is a best case scenario. Like I said, the seller told me that it didn't turn on. And the eBay listing said could be as simple as needing to replace the hard drive. But the seller didn't really know. They didn't say they had tested it with a different drive and then it did work, or they weren't selling it as just without a drive. They were selling it as spares and repairs, you know. They said this does not work. But based on the symptoms, it took a $20 IDE hard drive to get this thing back up and running, and now we've got a system. So at this point, I'm going to pause the camera. I'm going to go and find me some Mac OS X Tiger, I think, install media. Alright guys, so I've got a flash drive here. I actually looked. None of the CDs or DVDs that I have here have Mac OS on them, except for one that's a Hackintosh install disk for Mac OS Leopard. And by the way, I did look this machine up to confirm it. It can actually run Leopard, which I'm very happy about. So I said OS X Tiger before, which is 10.4. We're actually going to put OS 10.5 Leopard on this machine. Leopard is my favorite version of Mac OS. I'm so happy that this can run that. And Leopard was the Windows Vista of Mac OS. It was when they added a bunch of shiny new graphics and things got a little bit slower, but it looked really amazing. And so yeah, I'm really happy. Tiger would probably run a little bit more comfortably on here, but it's been a while since I've used a G4 machine and I've never used this one before, so we're going to see how Leopard does on it first. Now, like I said, I was looking for some older files because I know I've downloaded Leopard before. However, I found it online quicker than I found it on my own archival RAID array, so I downloaded it. Not sure if this machine can boot off of a USB. I am transferring. I've actually got one other Mac in the apartment right now, and it's the retro MacBook that we normally use to play music at Extra Life for here at Nerd on the Street. That's running Snow Leopard right now, but I'm copying a DMG of Leopard to that machine just in case I need to burn a DVD. But we're going to try with the USB first because I like to be economical, and I don't like wasting writable media when I can help it. So I've plugged in the USB drive. We're going to hit the power button, and some people I'm going to hold down, I guess, is it Command or Option? I'll try Option first. Some people say that it's as easy as holding down Option and selecting from the menu to boot from a USB drive on certain G4 machines. Alright, so we do have our our selection screen here, but it does look like, oh, here we go. Mac OS 10 install DVD. As you can see, this is going to be a little bit slow. I'm just trying to make sure you guys have the best angle possible. The screen is not tilted. That's an artifact of how the camera is positioned right now. But as you can see, it took a good minute to actually show up because USB 1.1. I said USB 1.0 earlier, but it is USB 1.1 that we're running back there, so very slow. So we are going to select that though and click the arrow, and we've got an Apple logo. And the rest of this should really be smooth sailing. We've fixed the hardware issue. I really think we've got that solved. I am going to go ahead and turn off our extra lighting since we're looking at a screen now. All right, and we do have a loading spinner. And if I look back there, oh, the flash drive's not really blinking. Not really blinking at all, is it? But I don't know if that's a limitation of the power on that USB 1.1 port or what. But yeah, once this boots, everything else should be fairly straightforward. We'll get this installed. In a few days when I receive those speakers, we'll put the last couple of screws back into the keyboard. We'll plug those speakers in and we'll see the final system. But let's not get ahead of ourselves here. First of all, we'll wait for this to finish booting. Here, I think I can actually adjust on the tripod. There we go. So nice having equipment that I did not used to have. I can adjust the actual tilt on my camera here. Sounds like the hard drive is spinning up. So since the installer is starting, it's obviously going to have to scan its storage devices at some point. Not sure what the exact process is going to look like. It has been a long time since I've installed Mac OS, but it should be exactly how I remember it, since it is so old. Here we go. Alright, so we've got a nice blue background, and here we've got our Mac OS 10 leopard wallpaper. Look at that. Like I said, Tiger would have been more of the classic blue, but I just love leopard. I love the purple Aurora background that we've got. Just get situated here, moving the keyboard and mouse. I'm gonna move the mouse on the right side of the keyboard so that I can actually use it normally. And so we will use English for our main language. And this is not bad at all. You can see the animations when they do come up. We haven't seen a ton of animations yet, but they're not too terrible. If we go to Utilities, Disk Utility, we'll open that up. And this Pro mouse, by the way, is reacting very nicely, very smooth tracking, even though I'm on sort of a reflective countertop surface right now. So here's our 250 gigabyte drive. You can see it says 232.9 gigabyte Hitachi, and then it's got the model number. We are going to go ahead and set up, let's see, I guess we'll see if it'll just let us install onto the blank drive first. We'll go back into the disk utility if we need to. Alright, so we will continue here. Oh, and by the way, I'll click agree. Now, the MacBook that I've gotten here has trouble connecting to my Wi-Fi. We don't need internet yet in here. It's freezing a little bit, or is it frozen? No, it's not frozen, so we don't have any destinations, so we do need to actually partition our disk manually. Obviously, Apple didn't design their installer for people who are building their own machines with new drives, and Apple probably has never shipped a Mac that did not have Mac OS installed. So we'll go ahead and make a single partition. Macintosh HD, apply, partition, and I'm listening a little bit. I can hear the hard drive a little bit. It's not too loud. Certainly less loud than like the hard drives in my computer, the Western Digitals that I've got. Very loud, very noisy. This one sounds like an old computer. It clicks a little bit, not unhealthily, but I can hear it. But yeah, like if I was playing music, it would not be audible over the music or anything like that. So let's choose our options here. Install Mac OS 10. Okay, we don't have any options. Here we go, customize. That's what I was looking for. Yeah, look at these, the animations, everything's sliding in, it's great. Language translations, we probably don't need language translations, although, you know, we've got 250 gigabytes, and I bought this drive just for this computer, so saving 1.9 gigs might have made sense if I was actually going to use this thing for a lot, but let's just go ahead and install the whole deal, since we've got a whole 250 gigabyte drive. If I really need to, I think you can remove that stuff after the fact, but if I use up over 200 gigabytes, all I'm going to put on this thing is like music, not even really a lot of video. So yeah, 1.9 gigs I don't think is going to make or break us. I'd rather have the complete package, so we'll click install, and let's see what horrid estimated time we get here, since this is going to take a little bit probably. Try and center us just a little bit more there. Time remaining, oh, still calculating even though our bar is already moving. Well, that's a good sign at least, that it's going fast enough that the time can't calculate. Should be pretty fast, like I said, because this drive, I'm going to assume is faster than the one that was originally in here, the Seagate. Alright, so the Seagate drive, the 80 gigabyte hard drive, that was the standard for this machine, so it was not built to order or anything. It was 7200 RPM, so it would be the same speed as what we've got now. So I'm happy we don't have a downgrade. Some of the ones that I was looking at that where I had back home are 5400 RPM, so that would have been slower than what was already in here. Obviously it's IDE, so we're still going to be bottlenecked there, but good to know at least that that is the same speed of drive physically. I think the USB 1.1 is probably going to be a little bit slower than if we were installing from a DVD, but the advantage to using USB is, of course, we're not wasting a DVD because those are limited. Once you burn one, you can't reuse it for anything else. Alright, and screen is even dimming. I wonder if we can turn that off, because I was just going to let it sit here. I've never seen the screen dim before in an installer, and now we're beach balling, alright. Guess I shouldn't have clicked anything there. And I was just taking a look on my phone at the speakers that I ordered, and those should be here on Friday actually. So everything's getting here quicker than expected, because I wasn't expecting this hard drive until Thursday. I wasn't expecting these speakers until next Monday or Tuesday, but they are in the mail and on the way. Of course, with the USPS, that doesn't necessarily mean they'll get here, because it was snowing today. But yeah, we might have this whole video done. This might be published this weekend, which would be excellent. Now I was going to leave the camera on and record this bar going across, because that's what I used to like to do when I was showing installs, especially macOS. I love the design of this bar, where it's this progress bar, where it's sort of got the animation going the opposite direction that the progress is flowing, and it makes it look like it's moving all the time, even when it's not really progressing. It still looks like it's making progress. However, my camera it's got 75 minutes of storage left right now, I can see on the screen, and it's just going to use gigabytes and gigabytes of space to watch that progress bar go across. We might not even make it. It might still take longer since we don't even have a time remaining yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause the camera, and I will be right back when this is almost finished installing. If you guys really want to see what the progress bar looks like going all the way across, go and watch one of my older videos. The camera was probably much more shaky, but I wouldn't have cut here. Alright guys, and we're not done yet, but I did just want to turn the camera back on and show you we've finally got a time remaining of about 5 hours and 5 minutes now. It is going down fairly quickly, but once again, that's why I turned the camera off. 5 hours would be a lot of footage for a progress bar. Wow, that's going down fast. Alright guys, and we are still chugging along here. It has not been 5 hours, but it has actually been about 3 hours. I think it was around 6 p.m. When I started this, and it's now about a little past 9 o'clock. Now I do want to go ahead, while this is finishing up, I'm going to go ahead and turn that keyboard over, and I'm going to put those missing screws. So here is what I neglected to put in the keyboard before. We have a little up piece here, as you might recall, and I think the camera's focusing pretty well there. And then there were 2 screws. Here they are. They were underneath my toolbox. So 2 small, Phillips screws. And so these, like I said, I was editing the first part of the video, and I think I saw where they came out of the keyboard. So I'm going to carefully push this machine back a little bit, and I'm just going to put down some paper towels, and I'm going to flip this thing over. I was kind of procrastinating doing this. I do want to get it out of the way though. I didn't want to open the keyboard back up because I did such a good job cleaning it, and I didn't want to get any dirt in there that's not in there now. But right now my hands are clean, and so I'm going to go ahead, like I said, I'm just going to get it over with. So I'm going to unplug that USB mouse, going to unplug the keyboard from the computer, and we'll try and get this done before the Mac finishes its install here. Just in case, I'll go ahead and zoom out a little bit, tilt up, so you can still see part of the screen. You can see that progress bar going. It says about 19 minutes left right now, so I'm estimating it'll take maybe 15 minutes. hopefully less. So we're going to set the keyboard down like that. And so I'm not taking all the keys out this time, not doing any of that, because like I said, it's fairly straightforward what we need to actually do. That flash drive is lighting up back there now, by the way. It started doing that during the install process. So we're going to go ahead and, okay, so got my T5 Torx screwdriver. We'll take out the 3 Torx screws. I think I can do this without taking any keys out at all. Yes, so the key, the membrane is weighed down there, as you can see. So here, on this white part, this is where the pieces are supposed to go. So for one thing, the little up piece, I was looking for 3 screws in this orientation, but they're not screws, they just kind of stick in here, and those plastic posts that provide strain relief for the USB cable, those 3 posts, yeah, it just slides right in there, doesn't even screw in or anything. So yeah, that's why I was so confused. It just kind of fell out and I didn't see it right away, and there's that in. And then the 2 Phillips screws, I think, go here and here on these 2 edges. I believe that's where they go, so we're gonna see. I think those are screw holes. If the screws don't go here, then I truly have no clue where they go. Okay, so I'm gonna carefully try and screw in. I think it connects the white plastic to the clear plastic from this side, and this angle is really tricky to work with, but that is going in, so I think that is correct. This is a little bit tight. All right, my angle's not great, but I think this is the right place to put the screw. Just need to get a better angle here. Yeah, there we go. All right, so that Phillips screw is in, and I don't think I broke anything. So we'll go ahead and repeat that on the other side and put that in. It'll just be nice to know, I won't have to keep track of those loose parts, and I'll know that everything that was in the keyboard before I cleaned it is still going to be in the keyboard. And we've seen the keyboard has been working for getting us into the menus and things. So once again, pretty successful job with cleaning. Okay, and so that is all the way put back together. Nice. Better late than never, right? So I'm just gonna grab paper towel once again. I was trying to avoid, I didn't want to open it back up because I didn't want more dirt in here after I went through all that work. But this part's not visible anyway. But I still want it to be clean. Yeah, plastic, dust likes to stick to plastic. All right, so the white up piece is falling out again. Once again, there were no screws, so I'm just gonna stick that in and kind of hold it there, because this is the opposite way you're kind of supposed to take the keyboard apart. I just didn't want to go through the whole process of taking all the keys out again, because that took a while, and that would be more of an opportunity to get dirt into the thing again, which, once again, trying to avoid. So we'll do the middle Torx screw first. Screws right in. Yeah, you might think that I have no clue what I'm doing sometimes when I'm just guessing how to take hardware apart, and obviously I could have gone and watched other videos, and I eventually did go and look up some guides for the keyboard, and I looked up a video on how to take the machine apart, but really, as long as I don't actually break anything, I am recording what I'm doing, and so I should be able to undo anything that I do. There we go. So, keyboard, I know if I hadn't addressed that, I personally would be one of those angry commenters. Jacob, why didn't you see at XYZ time? This is when you dropped that white piece out of the keyboard, and then you were talking about how you didn't know where it went. I would have been bothered by that myself, so that has been rectified. We'll put the screwdriver away for the last time, because like I said, we're installing right now, and then the only other thing we'll really need to do is plug the speakers in. And obviously I'm going to clean the speakers the best that I can. Speakers are kind of fragile, so I probably won't be as in-depth with cleaning those as I was with the keyboard. But yeah, when we get those speakers, I'll go ahead and plug the keyboard back in. We'll plug the mouse back in, make sure that still works. Cool. Oh, mouse, hello. Yes, there's the mouse. Took a minute. Yeah, when the speakers get in, I'll clean the outer plastic. I think the cone is exposed on these speakers, it's a pretty neat design. The ones that I picked up don't have a grill in front of them, which most of them didn't come with grills, so I'm perfectly fine with that. I think the ones that did come with grills, the same Apple Pro speakers or similar speakers came with the Cube G4 Mac, and then some came with the iMac G4, but the ones that came with the iMac are actually higher quality from what I understand. And yeah, the company who made these iMac G4 speakers, it's Hardin Carmen, I think? Yeah, Harman Kardon. They made the speakers, and they are still around today. They've got a very small product lineup, but they are still making speakers. They sell Soundstick 3, I think is the current, or actually they just released Soundstick 4s. They're just desktop speakers that you can get for any computer. And yeah, they're pretty popular still. And yeah, these Apple speakers have retained a lot of their value. The ones that I found are pretty cheap, about $25 I think, on eBay. But yeah, they look pretty good. The only thing is they're not tested, so they might just look good if they don't work. The deal with these Apple speakers, they use a 2.5 millimeter plug into the computer, like I said, whereas normal speakers and microphones and headphones use 3.5 millimeter. They use 2.5 millimeter, and then the connector is also shaped a little strangely that makes it difficult to plug in even to a 2.5 millimeter adapter. It is actually a proprietary connector. Not just a weird size, but a weird shape too. So the person who owns these speakers right now does not own an iMac G4, so they can't test the speakers. But there's no reason to believe that they won't work, just like there was no reason to believe this iMac G4 wouldn't work based on the testing that its previous owner did. And guys, I know this video is less technical than a lot of my other videos normally are, but thank you so much if you're still watching by now. Personally, I used to watch a lot more videos like this that were just longer and more rambly and had a lot of just old, cool, geeky computer stuff in them. And yeah, sometimes it's fun to, even though I know here on Nerd in the Street, we're more about free software and open source than locked down products like Apple products. But considering that it's locked down, I was still able to go online, find a copy of this software, this proprietary operating system, and we're still able to just clean up this device and make it look really nice. And like I said, it's more furniture than an actual computer that I'm relying on. So in this case, it's more of a historical thing. I'm okay with having a proprietary software running on my furniture when it's just kind of sitting there and sometimes playing music. If I was purchasing something brand new, it would have to be open source, of course, because times were quite different in 2003 than they are today. Ubuntu was quite early on back then. If they were even around, that was probably around when they started. Just gonna try and test our keyboard one more time. Yeah, there we go. Yep, keys still work and are functional. We're just very, very slow right now since we're running off of that flash drive plugged into the USB 1.1 port. And even though I love the purple Aurora background, and I'm really glad that I put Leopard on here instead of Tiger, because the Leopard was the first version that had a 3D dock as well, whereas Tiger had a 2D dock. And at this point, Macs have gone back to having a 2D dock in the latest versions of Mac OS since like Sierra, or even since, I don't know if Mojave had a 2D dock. I think it did. I'm pretty sure when they stopped naming the versions after cats and started naming them after places in California instead, that was when they ditched the 3D dock and went back to 2D, which at the time that they did that, I was just, huge facepalm from me, because the 3D dock looked so much cooler than the 2D dock. They really just went back in time with their graphic design and rolled back an advancement that they had made about a decade later. So I'm glad we're going to have the 3D dock, the slightly more metallic and slightly more 3D, gradients and everything on our top bar and on the windows and everything. However, I might still put the Tiger desktop background on here because I think it still looks just a little bit more retro, and I think that the blue of the Tiger wallpaper will complement this white and clear plastic a little bit better. I think it was either Panther or Cheetah. I'm looking at the wallpaper that's on the box for this iMac G4. I think it was Panther because it was 2003, so it wasn't that far behind Tiger, which was 2005. So yeah, I think we were at Panther when this machine shipped, and that was a blue, sort of blue and white desktop background. If you can't tell, I am stalling here, just trying to talk until this progress bar goes down, because I do want to catch the moment when this finishes and we reboot. I don't think it's going to prompt me. If it does, then I could have just gone to sleep by now, and this whole night's been a waste. But assuming that it's going to reboot by itself and play the intro video, which was another thing I liked about Leopard. Tiger had a cool intro video. Leopard's was cooler, in my opinion. It was very different, definitely different than all the previous ones. And then they stopped doing intro videos. macOS Snow Leopard used the same intro video as Leopard, and then with Lion, they just dropped. They used to have these videos, and you'll see it in a moment. They played music and said welcome in a bunch of different languages. And people still copy that. I'm pretty sure GNOME at this point, the first time you sign in, it says welcome in a bunch of different languages. People are still copying that 15, 20 years later, the thing that macOS has been doing since near the beginning of macOS 10. And yeah, the song that they used for the Leopard intro video, it became one of my favorite songs. I went and bought it eventually on iTunes, of course. That's still where I buy my music when it's on iTunes, since it is DRM free. But yeah, they just stopped doing that, which was disappointing. Alright, it has certainly been longer than 2 minutes. This thing is just trolling me at this point, seeing how late in my night I will sit here in front of it. Okay, install succeeded. And it is telling me, so it will go in 25 seconds, 20 seconds here if I don't click anything. Mac OS 10 was installed on your Macintosh HD volume. I'll go ahead and click restart. And now we will boot from our shiny new hard drive. Hopefully it'll be faster than booting from that USB drive. Still going to be an IDE hard drive, but like I said, brand new, 7200 RPM. Not a whole lot on it right now. First boot, of course, is going to take a little longer than non-first boot. Not sure I've ever seen the spinner going on top of the wallpaper like that, like it was before it shut down there. Oh, and my camera is just dying now. Huh. Come on. There you go. Alright. Camera lost its focus when the screen turned off. It didn't know what was going on there, but here's our Apple logo. Still no bong. That spinner came up a lot quicker than it did when we were booting from the USB drive, so I do think we're booting from the hard drive now. But yeah, so some Macs just don't make a bong. And this one might have been one of the ones that simply did not make that chime sound when you turn it on. We'll have to see if the built-in speaker works at all or not when we do get into our OS here. I'm also curious to see if I was correct, if that little dot down there is a microphone, or if it's just a crack or something. Here we go. Come on. Yes. Huh. Well, how about that? So there's no music playing right now. And this is like I said, I own the song. And this is something you can look up online on YouTube. Just type in Mac OS 10 Leopard welcome video. But yeah, there's supposed to be music playing right there. And there's not. So the built-in speaker on this thing is either busted or it's just not plugged in. Obviously, I did open this machine up, but there was no chime even before I opened it up. So either the previous owner did something to disconnect it, and you can replace the internal speaker if it's actually broken. That's not something I would go out of my way to do since I purchased external speakers that are on their way now anyway. But yeah, very interesting, because that means the speaker either failed of its own accord, which we all saw how dirty this thing was. It could have just failed of its own accord. Or, yeah, a previous service person disconnected it or broke it somehow. So that's interesting to know. I'm a little curious if the external speakers will give me a chime or not. If they don't, it would be kind of a bummer, but I don't really want to open this thing up again. It seems to be working well other than the audio, so as long as the external speakers, when those come in, if they work, then I think I'll be happy with that. So we'll continue through our wizard here. Alright, so I'm always a little bit hit or miss with Wi-Fi networks on Leopard and Snow Leopard. I'm not seeing... Let's see, Airport Wireless. Continue. Let's try other network. So this might not work, and yeah, there's an error joining the selected network. So I think what the deal is, Snow Leopard at least sees it in the list, and it's not in the list here, which is interesting. But just plain old Leopard, whether or not this version of macOS supports WPA to PSK or not, I think the problem is the encryption algorithms. It doesn't support the encryption algorithms that right now I don't even have an access point in this apartment, but I'm using my desktop computer as an access point because my desktop has a wireless card, and so I'm just surveying wireless from that. But I anticipated this, like I said, since the MacBook that I mentioned earlier, that one I haven't turned it on until today since I moved into this apartment, but I saw that it wasn't connecting, and I need the Ethernet for that one, so I broke out a nice long Ethernet cable that I will plug in now. There we go. Ethernet boot is nice and snug into that port, since that is the weird round back on this machine. Local network Ethernet then. There we go. Enter your Apple ID. This will be interesting to see if this actually works. Normally I don't do this. You will set one up later. You know, I'm just not going to, because none of this stuff, theoretically I could access like iDisk, but even if I had anything on iDisk, which I don't think I do, I wouldn't want it to be on this computer. iCal is the only other thing in this list I could possibly see myself using. iChat is dead, even though the services are separate for that one. And you can see they call it .Mac. Nowadays it's called iCloud, but before iCloud it was called MobileMe. But before MobileMe it was called .Mac. A little bit of history. Yeah, we'll just click continue and skip that. Registration information. Alright, skipped past the registration. I filled it out just for fun. Who knows if Apple's servers even receive this stuff anymore. Where will you primarily use this computer? This one, home. What best describes what you do? For this particular computer, I'll just put, I don't know, other? And I'm not going to subscribe to Apple's newsletter. Alright, create your account. I like to follow the Mac convention is first name, last name, and I don't know if BSD does that by default. On Linux, we like to use just the first name, all lowercase, on most distributions. So I'll do that, and then put in my generic password. Continue. This is a security risk. The hint and the password are the same. Okay. Okay. Oh, I guess password hint is not required, so probably should have just left that one blank altogether. That's alright though. So creating registration request. Alright, well it got past it. First time I'm registering a Mac in Denver. And it found the current date and time, which is impressive. Don't forget to register. I thought I just, to send a registration later, double click the send registration file. Okay, well let's try doing that. I guess the registration failed. So that answers my question of if the servers were online or not. I've never seen that before, so maybe it went offline in the past couple of years. Now that everything's usually synced up with iCloud with people who own Macs, they probably don't need the registration data as much. Here is our desktop though. Look at that. We've got the beach ball going. Alright, so a couple things I usually like to do on a Mac. I like to make the dock a little bit smaller. It makes the screen look bigger in comparison. I also, alright, let's try this send registration thing again. I double clicked it. Setup assistant. There's all my information again. Not going to subscribe to the newsletter. Continue. Click continue to send your registration to Apple. Creating registration request. Your registration cannot be sent. The connection to Apple is busy or your computer cannot connect to the internet. It looks like we're connected. We can double check that by doing something else. Well, there's a number of ways we could double check that actually. For one thing, if we go into our settings here, Alright, so here in settings, like I said, I like to make the dock smaller. I also like to turn on magnification because it's one of the coolest features of macOS is the slick magnifying dock. Look at that. Look at that. When's the last time you saw someone get excited over that? But that, I used to love. I really wanted Macs just for all these little bells and whistles. Minimize, yeah, we got the Genie effect already activated. Oops. Clicked on the wrong window there. Alright, so we'll go back to show all. So if we go to our network, in here, yeah, Ethernet is connected. We've got an IP address from my DHCP server running on my router. Airport, let's see. Oh, so here's my network listed, NOT's wireless. And then here's the problem, is it thinks that it's some enterprise thing because of the encryption requirement. So if I don't enter a username, yeah, connection failed. Now if I go to advanced, 802.1x, NOT's wireless, certificate unknown, domain, what? See, it's not WPA, it's WPA2. Turning on TLS will cause authentication to fail. Your keychain does not contain any suitable certificates. Okay, so I don't have certificates on my network. Yeah, see, this is for enterprise stuff, which is not what we're wanting. So let's add a preferred network. So network name, not wireless. I'm just gonna see if we can make this work. Might not be able to. WPA2 personal. So it's just asking for a password, which is correct, but then, oh, did it work? Click OK, I guess. Because yeah, on the MacBook it wasn't working. Have to remember my password that I just made. Okay. So will it actually connect though? Wants to use your confidential information. Always allow. Authenticating. Wants to use confidential information stored in your keychain. Always allow. It's interesting, I'm not seeing the failures that I saw on the MacBook, but it's clearly not working. And it would be nice to have this working. WPA, no, not WPA personal. You guys saw me, I clicked WPA2 personal. Man, it wants to stick on WPA personal for some reason. Yeah, so that's the crux of the problem, is that it's not understanding how my router is trying to authenticate, and my router, the quote-unquote router, my computer over there that's sharing my internet connection, requires WPA2 and not WPA. So we'll just turn off airport. I don't like to use wireless in general anyway, so I'm not too bummed about that. It would have been nice to be able to hop on here, and like I said, if I'm using it as a jukebox, when I buy a new song on my actual computer, then I would want to be able to transfer it over here easily. But you can see it pulled in, from my router, it pulled in my DNS settings and everything. And it's doing something with 802, I guess 802.1x. I'm not using that at all, so I guess I shouldn't have touched that. Alright, but we're gonna leave that alone. You can see we've got our internal modem for dial-up, and there's also FireWire for networking. Don't apply any changes. I messed that all up. Alright, what else did we want to do? Software update. Actually, we'll do that separately here in just a moment. I want to go to Appearance. No, I like the Appearance automatic. Desktop and Screensaver. So in here, yeah, Aurora is the default wallpaper for, and wasn't that the name of Vista's default wallpaper too? That's interesting. But where is the Tiger wallpaper? Apple Images. Here we go. Aqua Blue. See if we load here. There we go. So this might look a little bit more fitting for the machine. Here is the, oh, it was Jaguar. That was the version of macOS that shipped on this thing. And then Panther would be this one down here. And Panther and Jaguar were before my time with computers, or at least with knowing what a Mac was. But Tiger, I remember that. So yeah, that actually looks really nice. See how well the blue looks with the frame and everything? It's great. So we're going to leave that, and we're going to go to software update. We're also going to go to About This Mac and check this thing out a little bit. Alright, so we're checking for new software, and Apple is pretty good. I got an update for, I don't even remember what it was for, but I got an update just now that was pushed within the last year or so on that MacBook that's running Snow Leopard. So Apple is still, they're not only keeping their servers up, they're actually still making updates for some of these older OSs. I am going to eject the install DVD whenever it decides to do that. There we go. Unplug that just so it's out of the way. So as we said, we've got a 1 GHz PowerPC G4 processor, 768 megabytes of DDR RAM, because we've got the 256 gig stick on the inside and then that 512 stick on the bottom, the SODIMM. Startup disk is Macintosh HD. We won't go too much farther here today. I'll do another cut and then we'll finish it off with the speakers, but since I've gone through all this effort to get this thing working, I just wanted to take a look around here. So Mac OS 10 update combined. That is going to bring us up, oh, what version of Mac OS did it say we were running? I missed that. 10.5.1, okay, so yeah, 10.5.8 is the latest version, which is the most up-to-date version of Leopard that you can get, and then 10.6 was Snow Leopard. iTunes, we can go to 10.6.3. I still don't think it's going to let me sign into iTunes, and that's okay, because not all my music is from iTunes anymore. It used to all be from iTunes, but these days I still buy from iTunes when things are available, but I listen to enough stuff now that's not on iTunes that I need to manage it separately from iTunes. I just manage it in the file browser. But yeah, over here we've got our system profiler, Jacob Kaufman's iMac. I don't remember choosing that name, so we can probably rename that somewhere. But yeah, Power Mac 6,1. It's not even iMac, it's Power Mac. And then PowerPC G4 3.3. There's our cache, 256 kilobytes of level 2 cache, like they flaunted on the box. And yeah, we've got, should have our hard disk under ATA here. So yeah, we've got our Pioneer. Oh, and let's take a look at the DVD drive, because that's a fun thing in here. As you can see, the base is a little bit tilted, but I'm gonna hit escape, or no, I keep messing, I said escape when I meant eject at least one time earlier, so sorry about that. Hit eject though, there goes the DVD drive there, and then hit eject again, and it goes right back in. Pretty slow, it's showing its age, but yeah, that is very fun to do. I'm gonna do it one more time, so hit eject, and it comes out, goes right back in. Awesome. It was before slot loading, but they still made it very slick with the tray coming out by itself and going in by itself. You don't have to touch it. I'm sure if you push on it, it'll go back in by itself, but that would bother me, trying to force it. So that's the DVD read-writable drive. So very high-end. There's basically, the only thing you can't do on that drive is Blu-ray. Everything else, you're covered. And there's our Hitachi hard drive that we installed. Capacity 232.76 gigs, available 220 gigs. I'm using the journaled HFS Plus file system, using an Apple partition map. So yeah, very, very cool. Audio built in. It says there's a built-in sound card, and it says there is an external speaker. It says internal speaker. External speaker might be referring to the, oh, is system preferences taken up by the software update, or? Yeah, software update's keeping us from opening system preferences right now. Oh, maybe not. There we go, okay. So let's go to sound. Where is sound? Sound, here we go. So output, the only device is headphones, okay. So it knows that there is a speaker line on the bus, but it also knows that the speakers aren't connected. I bet they're just not plugged in, to be honest. But like I said, I've got those cool Apple speakers coming in anyway. So I'm gonna leave that alone. And when those come in later this week, I'll show you guys the Apple Pro speakers. No Bluetooth on this thing. Power on self-test. That's interesting. It shows you the last time the machine posted, which is today. And it's even the correct time. Disk burning. Yep. Fiber channel, nothing. Firewire 400. Here's our GeForce 4 MX, like we said, with 64 megabytes of VRAM. And you can see this thing still performs pretty darn well. Look how fast you can move everything around. This is really a testament to PowerPC as an architecture. Obviously, Apple has dropped support. Newer versions of macOS will not run on these at all. But up until the very last OSs that were supported on PowerPC at all, they still ran very well. You can drag Windows around. This isn't stuttering. This is very smooth. So yeah, you've got Windows machines and even Intel Macs that are much slower than this after being this old, or even less old. Our resolution on the display is only 1440 by 900. I'm not a big resolution guy, as long as I'm more about the DPI. This is pretty standard, pretty good for me. Hardware RAID, nothing in the way of hardware RAID. So we've got RAM. Yeah, there's our two sticks like we saw. PC cards, nothing. PCI cards, nothing. Power, AC power. Oh, and we've got our sleep timer that will go to sleep by itself. I'll probably turn that off because I like my machines actually to stay on, and I'll tell them when to go to sleep. So let's go to power, energy saver. And I normally am pretty good about turning stuff off. Go. Put the displays to sleep, but the computer isn't active for, oh, getting a beach ball there. Never, and it may shorten its life. I guess we'll do 3 hours. So never go to sleep, but you can put the display to sleep after 3 hours if you want to. That sounds good. And then, got wake on LAN. Don't reduce the brightness of the display. Restart automatically after a power failure, no. And then I forgot that we have screensavers too. This was back when screensavers existed. Go to desktop and screensaver. Go over here. So the screensaver right now, we'll set that to 30 minutes. And what's the default? This is the default screensaver called Flurry. You can hear my refrigerator in the background, I'm sorry. There we go. So yeah, nice default screensaver that Windows Vista totally copied. But we also have, I think that's probably the coolest screensaver. Windows had some really cool screensavers back in the day. Apple didn't really. We've got just the computer name, which I didn't even set manually. This one seems to be actually stressing. Yeah, see, that one's a little bit choppy. Can't render all those circles at the same time. iTunes artwork, which we'll have some artwork later. RSS visualizer is an interesting one. If you use RSS feeds, this might still be useful today. Although I don't know, were there any default feeds? I don't think so. Yeah, Shell is another one. You can see even the preview is choppy. So that probably won't work too well. Spectrum is, this one looks like it would belong on a current day Mac. Just bright colors and gradients. And then word of the day. Let's see what the word of the day, this was programmed 2003. What's the word of the day for September 8th, 2019? Tell me the word of the day, Apple. Slacker. Oh no, word of the day is Calumet, a North American Indian peace pipe. Calumet, okay. Sounds good. I'm gonna put that back to Flurry, since that one, you can see that one is very optimized, still runs very well after all this time. If I go to our mouse, the Apple Pro mouse did have squeeze support. You can see there's a button on either side of this, at least I think it did, or did that start with the Mighty Mouse? I might just be lying to you, because I'm not a Mac expert. Nope, this mouse did not have any sort of squeezing or gesture support, so good to know. Time machine, all kinds of cool stuff came around with Leopard. Lots of very cool stuff. And then there's Spaces, which I use virtual desktops on Linux every day. My personal computer, my work computer, my spare computers. There's not a computer that I use consistently that does not have virtual desktops enabled. We can hit F8 to activate here. So you recognize this if you know virtual desktops. Looks very similar to Ubuntu's Unity, looks very similar to KDE. They at least have an option to give a desktop grid in KDE like this, so you can drag windows to different virtual desktops, and then we can use control and our arrow keys to switch between the virtual desktops, or the spaces as they called them. This was one of the things I really loved this about Macs, and then when I found out that you could do it with Linux too, it was just a mind-blowing thing. That was one of the things that really made me very interested in Linux as a child. So yeah, that all is very cool. We'll keep going down the hardware here just to end off this segment, because I got a little bit more SD card space, might as well use it. USB hub, it even breaks down what hub things are on, so you can see our Apple Pro keyboard. So it refers to itself as a Pro keyboard, even though the bottom of the keyboard says Apple keyboard. It is an Apple Pro keyboard. The packaging was not lying to us. And then Apple, that one says Pro mouse on the product, but this says optical USB mouse in the software, so that's the opposite. Here we've got, so our airport, I wonder if it's got any information on the airport card about what authentication it can use. Doesn't look like it really does. Yeah, I'll have to see. I can play around a little bit more with the wireless. I just don't want to lower the security of my home network just for this retro Mac that's not going to be on the network very often. I'll just run the Ethernet cable over here when I need to. But the Ethernet cable, I've gotten so network oriented these days, I would rather break out a 50-foot Ethernet cable than use a flash drive when I need to transfer files between two computers. And the rest of this stuff is software. Alright, so we'll go ahead and restart to apply those updates that were downloaded. And unless this is very quick, I'll probably let you guys go. We can see the default wallpaper again there, which I'm totally okay with. I might move it back to that one. I really do like the purple Aurora wallpaper. I love that wallpaper. I'm just thinking what's gonna blend in and not, I don't want it sticking out per se. Just want something that looks nice in the corner. All right, well that's going pretty slowly, even though it is on the hard drive now. So yeah, I will let you guys know. Current ETA is Friday for those speakers coming in. So we'll take a look at those when they get here. All right, guys, little time jump. It is now Friday, September 11th, 2020. And today I received these speakers that I ordered earlier this week or last weekend. Don't quite remember when I actually ordered them. I have been editing some of the previous footage for this video. I think it's coming out pretty well. And we are going to wrap it up today. It is 5:20 p.m. I'm clocked out of work. I have nothing to do this weekend. Nothing else to do today except for finish this project. So we do have some eBay packaging here. My address is written on the other side of it, so I'm gonna cut it open from this side. So I'm very excited to see these speakers, see if they're in good condition, see if they work. I'll be doing my final cleaning passes on everything, and then I will be setting this machine a little bit farther back on the counter. Obviously right now I've got it kind of pulled out where we can see it better, but long term it needs to be a little bit more out of the way than that. And I know the audio has not been great in this video. That's the one negative to this video, but in particular is that I was using the camera's internal microphone. It really has made it a lot easier though. It would have taken a lot longer and we probably wouldn't have gotten as good of camera angles if I was worried about messing with microphones at the same time. So here, interesting. Okay, people just keep leaving their personal information on my packages. All right, well, we'll open this up. For all I know, all those people have moved already. And that kind of thing. Oh, this originally, it says it shipped from Mobile Fidelity Sound Lab. So yeah, that was probably from the original purchaser of these. So maybe not even the person that I bought it from. In here though, okay, this is extremely, I gotta say, I am disappointed with this packaging. We do have that's not even really bubble wrap. They just stuck the speakers inside of a giant plastic bag with a little bit of paper on the bottom. And that's the extent of their packaging, no bubble wrap. So yeah, might leave a negative review on that seller if these don't work, because they would have just been kind of banging against each other as the post office was transporting them. It's not like the post office is super careful with things, but we will carefully, now that it is in our possession, slide these out. All right, I do have to say they look very nice. When I was looking for these online, I was looking for ones that did look pretty pretty good, pretty new, even though they are so old. Like I said, the 2003 was when these were being manufactured and sold brand new. A lot of these have yellowed over the years, so these white circles that you've got, a lot of them have turned more of a yellow. Now if they're gray, that's more dirt, and you can sometimes clean some of that off, but yellowing is a little bit more difficult to deal with. As you can see, the end of the cable has yellowed a little bit, if the camera wants to focus on the cable there. Come on, there you go. Little bit of yellowing on the end of the cable, but this is so much newer looking and so much nicer than a lot of the ones that were listed. I wasn't looking for one of these for too long. It really was a pretty quick purchase for me. I found out that the iMac that I bought didn't include speakers, which I went back to try and look at the original listing, but it was no longer available for viewing since it's been so long. But I'm fairly certain they did not advertise the iMac as including these. But yeah, I went online, I just looked for some. I was basically looking for the best cosmetic condition, because a lot of the people selling these, it wasn't just this seller that said it's not tested or untested. A lot of the sellers, if you don't actually have an iMac G4, like I said, this is that 2.5 millimeter plug that is smaller than a standard 3.5 millimeter headphone jack, and then the way that it protrudes here with a very thick connector and then this little bump in the middle before the actual jack itself. It was a proprietary connector. The pinout is very simple, but it is a proprietary shape. And so, yeah, most of the people selling these were not really testing them. So here's what I want to do. We're going to make this very simple because the video has gotten very long already. What I'm going to do first is plug these in. We're going to see if they work together here. And then once we see if they work or not, assuming that they do, because I'm really hoping, crossing my fingers that they do, I'm going to turn the camera off. I'm going to spend some time cleaning everything up. I need to go onto my main machine over there on the other side of the room and actually clean up my music library a little bit. I mentioned earlier in the video that a lot of the songs I listen to these days aren't even available on iTunes. And so when I go to add music to my collection, it's not as simple as just downloading from iTunes and copying the files like I used to do. I have to worry about all the tags and the cover art and all the metadata like that. And then of course the file structure. Sometimes even the encoding if it's something I'm ripping or getting from a different source online. So yeah, that's going to take a little while. But for right now, I want to see if these speakers work. They do. Look how nice they look though. Even they're not cleaned up yet, but you can tell. I mean, they've got the white and sort of gray silver that matches the base of the iMac and the mouse and keyboard here. The clear plastic obviously matches. And I do have to say, this is a pretty neat design. You can see into them. I actually, looking at pictures online, I thought that this was a hole that was actually just open that you could stick your finger into, but there's sort of an inner layer to this plastic and there's an outer layer. So this is actually still hard plastic, even though you can see that circular cutout there. Yeah, all the pictures I was looking at, I was convinced this was actually a cutout, but that is plastic there. So yeah, and it's clear, so if it was super scratched up or dirty, that would kind of make it not look as cool. But yeah, we're gonna see how these things sound right now. Some of these, like I said, I'm not sure, I'm a little unclear if it was the exact same model or if it was the Cube G4 speakers that weren't as good in the first place. They sold some speakers that looked similar, that did include a speaker grill that sort of popped onto the front, and it looked very similar to the back with the circular cutouts that the backs have, but it was just basically it finished out the sphere here, and then it had some circular cutouts for the sound to get out, but I would imagine that those would affect the sound significantly anyway, based on what they looked like. Alright, so enough of me talking, because this video has been a lot of me talking. I want to say again, thank you to everyone. Oh, you know, here, I'll plug this in really quickly, because I should have plugged it in to see if we got a bong. Alright, I think we missed the bong anyway, but the speakers are plugged in, so we're just going to turn the Mac on. It does have OS X Leopard on it, like we saw before, and I did end up finishing all of the updates that were available for it later that night. I went and kept checking up on it every couple of hours. It would get done with the current round of updates, and then it would have a couple more updates to install, and then it would have a couple more updates to install. But yeah, it is completely up to date now. You can see it's still plugged in to the internet. All right. It's going to be kind of a moment of truth here, because if these don't work, the seller said that they were untested, so I'm not going to have any recourse. And I would probably at that point just maybe see if I can open up the iMac and get the internal speaker working. and then just have these as a show piece as part of the collection here. But let's go into sound here. Headphones, built-in audio. And so this is actually... Alright, so I think there should be some sort of indication when we're moving the volume up and down coming out of the speakers, and there's not right now. So right now I'm not getting anything from either of the speakers, which I would think... I don't know, it would be really strange for them to break at the same time. I'm not sure where the electronics are in here. It looks like the splitter, where the cable kind of goes off into two wires out of the one connection to the computer, that might be a failure point. So yeah, it's not being detected at all right now. I should have at least put some sort of audio on here, I guess. If I open up iTunes, oh, interesting. The icon for iTunes requires QuickTime 7.5.5 or later. Wait, so we can't even launch iTunes, okay. Yeah, it was the old iTunes icon until I launched it, then it switched to the newer iTunes icon. That was interesting, and then I can't even launch it anyway. Let's open up Safari then. Just trying to find something that makes audio. Windows XP came with a built-in like sample song or two, but I don't think macOS does, no. And I'm doubting this thing, yeah. So YouTube's not gonna work, okay. Let's go to the system profiler. I'm fairly certain we should hear some sort of indication when we're turning the volume up and down there. Yeah, we've got our line in here that obviously nothing's plugged into that. It's interesting that they're not being detected at all. I'm wondering what could be wrong for that to happen. It really does seem like it would have to be something very close to the end of the cable, because even if the cones or something like that were broken, or the electronics in the speakers, I would still think the machine would recognize that I'm plugging this 2.5mm connector in, because it's just, I mean, I can see the rings on the connector there. Of course, it's also possible this is still a problem with the iMac itself, because the internal speakers don't work, and I'd expect them to. I was assuming it was the speaker itself in the iMac that was unplugged or something, but if the sound card of the iMac is what's causing the problem, that might be a separate issue. Let me grab some headphones real quick. Alright, so I've just got some earbuds here, not my main headphones or anything, but I'm going to plug those in to the 3.5mm headphone jack. And I'm just going to check if I can hear anything when I turn the volume up and down. Yes, I can. I can absolutely hear that. There's sort of a little puddle splashing sound when you turn the volume up or down. Okay, which I knew that happened normally. So, I really, at this point, I know I just bought speakers that were untested, and I know that packaging was just god-awful. They didn't even put any paper between the two speakers. I'm pretty disgusted with that packaging, even more than I was disgusted with the state of this machine when I got it. But leaving that aside, this feels more like an issue with the sound card, so I'm going to do some research. I'm going to see, there shouldn't be any drivers that we need because it's Mac OS. Their whole thing is that they include all the drivers for us. What was I doing about this Mac? I was going to Software Profiler, or System Profiler. If we go down to the audio built in, so input, line level input, internal microphone. So there should be an internal microphone as well, which if we go to the input section, you can see we've only got line in. We don't have an option for internal microphone, even though we've got one, we can see it kind of sticks out there, if that is indeed the internal microphone that we're looking at. And there should be an internal speaker as well. So where did we see, I thought I saw something about unavailable earlier. Number of inputs 2, number of outputs 3. Why don't we see it? If it's showing up in System Profiler, and we'll keep going through, diagnostics passed, so, although I think that's just a post, yeah. To change your computer's sound input device, click Input. It says right here, you can input sound into your computer using your computer's internal microphone, and we don't have one. So I'm going to, this is probably something very simple, or if not simple, at least known. Where was it? I don't know where I saw that earlier, that something was unavailable for the internal speakers and microphone. Maybe I'm just thinking of this page. Yeah, we've just got sound. If I open up a terminal, we don't have LSPCI or LSUSB or anything like that, do we? And I'm going to go ahead and make a stack for applications. if macOS will let me. Wow. Okay, well that was not what I wanted to do. Here we go, applications. First we'll put it back into our sidebar. Oh, so I can drag it. Yeah, I can't drag it from the sidebar into the dock, but I can drag it from just the normal Finder window into the dock. Interesting. And then can I... There we go. So down here in our applications, now that we've got that stack, I can't scroll. I don't need to scroll though. Here's utilities, which is just going to open up a folder anyway, because they didn't add stacks that you could navigate into folders within the stack until Snow Leopard. I think that's when they added it. So we're going to open up our terminal though, and there's nothing else here that could possibly help us, right? No. Alright, so if I do an lspci, not found. Okay. So yeah, there's some commands in here, but not ones that are going to be useful to me. Obviously, we're not running Pulse Audio on macOS Leopard. Alright, so to avoid burning more SD card space, I'm going to pause the camera now. I'm going to research this. I'll be back when I figure it out. Alright guys, so I tried resetting the PMU and I also tried resetting the PRAM one more time. Neither of those things helped. Before we shut down here, just to confirm that they didn't help. If we go back into sound here, yeah, we're still just seeing headphones. So what this feels like is happening is something is wrong with the headphone jack, and it thinks that headphones are plugged in even when they're not. Now the headphone jack works, and it's really a shame I can't just plug these speakers into the 3.5mm audio out jack that any other speakers could plug into. These particular speakers with this proprietary connector need to plug into the 2.5mm jack, or I need to do some sort of crazy conversion, which people have done. I've seen lots of guides online with how to convert this to a USB interface. I assume it would be simpler to convert it to 3.5, so maybe I'll look into that as a last-ditch effort. But first, I'm just going to try plugging in and unplugging the headphones a couple times first to see if we can get anything unstuck back there. Internal speakers. Hey, look at that. That's funny. You guys saw me plug these in before while I was listening to them, and it didn't do anything that time, and I tried plugging them in and unplugging them. That's not the first time I've done that, but I decided to try it a couple more times, and on the first try, now we've got audio, and then we can plug in our shiny new external speakers. External speakers shows up. Look at that. And those sound pretty darn good. I can already tell that they're higher quality than the internal speakers in the iMac. Listen to that again. So this is internal. And then here is external. Yeah, just from the volume up and down sound, I can tell those are higher quality. We'll hear a little bit more with the music later. Maybe I'll break out one of my better microphones just for that comparison. But yeah, at this point, cool, so the speakers work. I got really lucky here because I got two things that were untested / not working on eBay. And both of them were very simple to get working. The speakers, there was nothing wrong with them. The iMac had a couple things wrong with it, but nothing that a hard drive and a good cleaning couldn't fix. So at this point, like I said, I'm gonna clean everything up, give everything a little bit more care and attention to make it look nice. I'm going to go back to my other computer and get my music library in a state where it's ready to be copied over. And then I'm going to reach out over the network and copy it over here. I guess I am going to need iTunes to launch, is the one thing. iTunes requires QuickTime 7.5.5 or later. If we go to software update, we're going to check for new software and probably nothing's going to be available. So the question is, can we get QuickTime 7.5.5, which QuickTime I believe is discontinued now, which is pretty crazy considering how many resources Apple put into it over the years. I'm not sure why Apple would have pushed an iTunes update for me that required a QuickTime version that's not supported. Why would they have pushed the update in the first place? It seems like I wouldn't expect. I've never been burned by a Mac OS update. Yeah, software update says that everything's up to date. Can we search? Let's try DuckDuckGo first, I guess. DuckDuckGo.com. Let's see how well DuckDuckGo supports. Safari can't open the page. Oh, we're having HTTPS problems. Cool. Start page? Nope, can't get start page. Google? Alright, we can get to Google because Google does not enforce TLS, which normally is a bad practice. Like nerdonthestreet.com probably would not load on this thing. Let's find out while we're here. nerdonthestreet.com because I don't enforce. Yes, I do enforce HTTPS. Oh, but it works because I allow older versions. So it's not necessarily the TLS version. It could be the TLS version. What I think is more likely is the Cypher suite. I had a whole deal in the HP Pavilion video with Windows Vista earlier this year about what happens when Cypher suites don't match between your client and your server. They can't find a common ground. You can't access the website. But that aside, so let's search iTunes requires QuickTime 7.5.5 or later. If we just Google that error message. All right, we've got some Apple discussions. And Apple's website luckily does load, even though they are, once again, they're using TLS, but it's just, or SSL at least, but it's an older version that this machine can support, and a Cypher suite that it can support. Maybe it would have been better to look this up on my phone, because it would have been a little bit faster. And then we can navigate directly to the download that we need when we find it, maybe. I think the worst comes to worst, we should just be able to uninstall that iTunes update and get back to the old version of iTunes. We could install, I mean, worst comes to worst, we could, that's not a real saying, we could reinstall macOS and just not apply any updates. I wanted it to be all up to date as much as possible. All right. What is it? Command, Option, Escape? Yeah, let's force quit Safari. We'll go ahead and force quit iTunes since it's not doing anything for us. Okay. Yeah, I know that it quit. I'm gonna tilt, this is a really nice angle for me, but I want to get a slightly better angle for the camera. There we go. Maybe that's better, maybe I made it worse. Hard to tell through the tiny little viewfinder. All right, so we're gonna Google something different. QuickTime 7.5.5 Leopard PowerPC. And the Apple support pages are down that used to be hosting this stuff, which I'm pretty disappointed in Apple for. macOS 10.5 Leopard PowerPC. So this download from oldversion.com, I was actually looking for this file. This was the first result on my phone. Google just reorders stuff randomly. You know, I guess it doesn't matter what website we get it from. We get it from oldversion.com. Because newer is not always better, not when it's literally unsupported. We'll click download now. We're going to hope that's not an advertisement. I don't think it was. I'm pretty good at picking out the correct buttons. Your download should start automatically. There it is. Okay, download.php. I don't think that's the right file. That doesn't sound like QuickTime. That's just another download.php coming through. All right, so we'll stop that. We'll let this finish downloading because 26 megabytes for a PHP file is pretty big. And normally you can't just download PHP files. They're rendered server side before they're displayed for you. But we'll see here what happens. If that doesn't work, we'll try one of these other websites. I make an effort not to use Google in my videos these days. When I need to search something, I always try to go DuckDuckGo or Start Page or Bing or anything else first. You guys saw me. I made an attempt, at least. Google is insecure, and that saved them this time. Or they at least support insecure protocols. This is moving at 246 kilobits per second. I know that's not my internet throttling. Alright, here we go. Downloads. So, I want to open this in the Finder. Download.php. And then this was the one that I canceled. So we'll delete that. And clean up. No? Arrange by name. There we go. So I'm going to double click download.php, a script application which was downloaded from the internet. What happens if does it open in Safari? This program cannot be run in DOS mode. Okay. I think that this is just named wrong, so we're going to try renaming it to QuickTime. Is it an exe file? Or, I mean, I'll just rename it to DMG, and we'll see what happens. Nothing happens. Okay. I mean, this file cannot be run in DOS mode. Sounds like an exe. Well, hello. Alright, you'll let me rename to DMG, but you won't let me take that extension off. Get info. The mouse, the one reason I don't use these mouses day to day is because there's no right click. I don't know how Apple got along without a right click for so long. Name and extension. .exe. Use.exe. Alright, well this isn't working. So let's try macintosrepository.org. That sounds specific to Macs. QuickTime 7.5.5. Leopard.dmg. Perfect. Well, this... no? Nice. Oh, look at this. Macintosh repository, their website is set up to detect that I'm browsing this on an old Mac, and they've deactivated SSL to help with the compatibility. That's cool. Download via, yeah, HTTP, that's fine. Give me the file. There we go. This website looks pretty neat. macintosrepository.org. If I was more of a Mac geek, I might dig through and see what other old apps that I can get running. Obviously, I'm just trying to use this as a jukebox, and I like the hardware, I like the design. I'm not too into all of I like the history, but not sure if it's worth just digging through old software. Verifying the disk image. There we go. All right, it's a .pkg and it's auto-launched. Wow, very secure. That it decompresses the archive, mounts the disk image, and starts the installer automatically upon the file finished downloading. So, we're gonna quit Safari. macintosrepository.org. I'll have to remember that. Okay, continue, 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 agree, install. Type in my very secure password. We will continue the installation knowing that we'll need to reboot the computer. I'm not rendering anything in the background that needs to avoid rebooting. It's interesting, I'm really wondering why they didn't ship QuickTime 7.5.5 through Apple Software Update if it's required for that iTunes version that they did ship through Apple Software Update. Because I saw iTunes get updated, and I'm kind of wondering if I shouldn't have installed all the updates knowing how old this machine is. But yeah, this icon, I see this icon and I think like this is new iTunes, because they switched to this icon after I was already, using Linux day to day, so I barely ever used iTunes by the time they switched to this icon, because they've never made iTunes for Linux. But it's not actually that new of an icon. It's years and years old. It's just not the classic disk icon that I remember. Okay, restart those speakers. I'm excited to see how some music sounds through the speakers. It's not like I even listen to music that often anyway, but updating boot caches. System shutdown will proceed once the caches are up to date. Okay. Alright, and we should get a chime this time. Wow. That came out of the external speakers, and that was a lot of bass. Considering I'm looking at these tiny little speakers, and like I said, there were versions that came with subwoofers, or there were subwoofers that were produced in conjunction with these, but this Mac came with these speakers. It never came with a subwoofer, but that was a lot of bass for just two desktop speakers sitting almost as high as my head is off the ground right now. The speakers do have sort of a rubber circle on the bottom that keeps them from sliding around. All right. So, let's see if we can launch iTunes now. Okay, We'll agree to the license agreement. I think it's going to launch since we got the license agreement and not an error message. iTunes requires QuickTime 7.6 or later to play videos purchased or rented from the iTunes Store or to use music purchased from the iTunes Store and other applications. Okay. I wonder if Software Update will find an update now that we've got QuickTime 7.5.5 installed. Will it find the update to 7.6 now? Because it just told me to open Software Update in that message. And I'm not planning on watching video on this. 4K footage probably would not read fast enough off of the hard drive. And the screen's not super high res anyway. Your software is up to date. Okay. Alright. Well, we've got our welcome tutorial. We've got a place to leave feedback for this very old version. I'm not going to actually sign into iTunes here, and I've already taken care of the DRM stuff, so I don't need to worry about that. I made a video about that back in 2015 or 2016. It was 2016 when I did that. I am going to see if I can get QuickTime 7.7 though, just because. 7.7 I've heard is the latest version that you can run, and it's newer than the 7.6 that it's recommending to me now. So just to see if we can not get that message every time we open iTunes up. QuickTime 7.7 Leopard download. And we'll see if we can get Macintosh repository.org. Perfect. QuickTime 7.7 Leopard 10.5.8. Which is what we're running, right? 10.5.8? About this Mac? 10.5.8. Yes, that's our version. So, I know we just did this. I could have just skipped to installing the latest version right away. Instead, I went with the older version first. You cannot rush downloads like that. Wow. So I have to wait 20 minutes in between. Well, here's what I was signing up for a free account. Okay, so if I register for a free account, then I don't have to wait more than a minute. If I refresh this, it should update 12 minutes, 42 seconds. All right. I'm not going to register for an account. I don't like that business model. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll catch you guys in 12 minutes and 42 seconds here. The reason I'm not just going to a different website though is because the previous download worked. So we know this website's legit. All right guys, it has indeed been more than 12 minutes. So we'll go ahead and refresh. I'm not even mad about that. It's such a blast from the past. Plenty of websites still do this, but you know, no, I don't have to use them as often these days. All right, so QuickTime 770 leopard_0.dmg. And it's probably going to auto start like the last one. Indeed, there we go. So I will quit out of Safari and X out of that Finder window, and we'll continue through here again. Accept our license agreement, install. And it will reboot one more time after it's done installing. Alright, that is finished. We'll reboot one more time. Here comes the... It is so... Like, I've heard the chime on a number of retro devices. You know, I've got that... These speakers are way better than the speakers in that MacBook, obviously. But that's a laptop. The speakers are, they're definitely better than the speakers in the iMac G3. I don't have one here to compare, but I know it wasn't that full in the iMac G3. And the G3 speakers were made by, I believe, the same company. Alright, so there's our desktop. Still waiting for the icons on the top right to load. There we go. And we will open iTunes up. We should see no messages this time, no errors, no warnings about our QuickTime version. Perfect. Yeah, we do need iTunes to work, obviously, to be able to play music. We could play music through the file browser, but that would be no fun. So yeah, and it is still an old enough version of iTunes. See, this is what I was talking about. The icon was different. It's iTunes 10, I believe, right? About iTunes... Yes, iTunes 10 was when they changed the icon. They got rid of the disc logo because nobody uses optical media anymore, and they switched to just a music note. Big, big change in the icon. But iTunes 11 was when there was actually a bigger interface change because they dropped the sidebar and they moved navigation to the top, and things just got a lot more laggy in general, even on modern machines, particularly Windows, that really just went downhill with the performance in iTunes. And you can see we've still got our library here. You can get your playlists over in the left-hand side. You can access Genius. iTunes DJ is one that I use a lot. I don't use Genius a whole lot, where it comes up with playlists based on what it detects in your music. But iTunes DJ, it just kind of continuously shuffles and makes a mix that keeps playing, and you can add your own. If you want a song to play next, you can put one in, and you can even do that remotely if your machine's on the network, which this one is, so that's actually pretty cool. Now, I don't have an iPod Touch, iPhone, or iPad. I guess I'm all Android these days. So I won't be using that remote feature. But yeah, you can just walk up to it and you can drag a song into the list to play next. Or you can skip to the next song right away, but it just kind of keeps things playing in the background without you having to go and click on the next album whenever what you're listening to finishes. So yeah, very cool. And at this point, I'll let you guys know when I've got the whole setup ready for presentation. Alright guys, and it is the next day. It's Saturday, September 12th, and it's already 2:30. Obviously slept in this morning since it's the weekend, and here you can see I stayed up really late last night. That's why I slept in this morning, getting this all set up here. And I have to say I am loving how it turned out. Now I'm going to set the camera on the tripod and talk about a few more software things in a minute, but first, look at this, guys. This is exactly what I was picturing, and I want to say again, when I ordered this iMac, I was in a completely different location. I didn't have room to put it anywhere. It was going to be like the laptops, the HP laptops that I did videos on earlier this year. I unboxed them, I put some software on them, kind of played with them a bit, and then I put them on a shelf, and I didn't really use them. And to be quite honest, that was what I thought this iMac was going to be, because I've got a lot of other old Macs too. I've got 2 iMac G3s, I've got a Power Mac G3, I used to have a Power Mac G4. I ended up selling the Power Mac G3 and then trading the G4 for the G3 to get the G3 back because I liked it better. But yeah, when I got this iMac G4, when I bought it on eBay, I thought, oh, this is going to be something that I'm just going to take out of the box, I'm going to play with it a little bit, I'll make a video, and then it's getting put back away in the box just to not really be used. And I'm really glad that I had this idea to put it here in the kitchen. Now, this already is not a very technical video, so I'm gonna get a little bit more personal with it, have some lifestyle shots here. This is the kitchen in my new apartment. I absolutely love this apartment. The last apartment I was living in, I kind of got it on short notice, and this time, since I've been in the Denver area for a year now, I had plenty of time to look around for a place I really liked. Now, the iMac, as you can see, it just matches everything so well here. And it's really a testament to Apple and their design that you can have a machine that is 17 years old and it still looks great in a kitchen, 17 years later, because designs change over time. This whole white color scheme and the whatever kind of countertop this is, they're very modern, and that was what I was looking for in an apartment, and the iMac still looks really in place next to all of that. There are a lot of other computers out there that look really cool, but this white and clear plastic design just really, it matches so well. Now, as you can see, I've got the iMac in the corner. It fits perfectly, and I can move the display up and down a bit. Realistically, I normally have it tilted up a bit so I can see it better, but just for display purposes, it's probably going to be not so far tilted back and probably a bit more up. The display obviously can turn once again without having to worry about turning the base, so theoretically even somebody standing on the other side of the counter could reach over and use it without too much trouble. Now, I've got the keyboard and mouse in front of it, and I did quite a bit with the cable management. I say quite a bit, it's pretty basic, but you guys know me. I'm gonna just pan over to my main working area, and I've been in this apartment for less than a month. I've still got a lot of stuff I need to clean up. The cables that are on the floor, that's not stuff that I'm using day to day, but even just my main computer setup, you can see over there, you can see cables hanging down from behind the desk. And those are cables that I use every day, so I don't really mind that they're there because they're being utilized. You can see where they all plug into my computer, and then you can see my work table on the side. Also, just has a ton of cables hanging off of it. I knew this could not be the same, because even though I'm not a cable management person, computers are gonna have cables. That's part of how they work, so I'm okay with that. This could not have that, though. This couldn't have cables hanging out of the setup because it's a kitchen, you know? You're gonna be cooking things in here, possibly eating in here. And when somebody walks in, you know, this is the first room in the apartment, you don't just want cables on your kitchen counter because it just kind of makes you look like you're in the middle of a project, whereas this is not supposed to be a project necessarily that's ongoing. It's supposed to be part of the furniture here. It's an appliance to play music. So I did go a little bit farther with cable management than I normally do. I've had some Velcro ties or Velcro strips that I got for free a long time ago when I ordered some cables from Monoprice. I never used those. I've always preferred just twisty ties over Velcro strips, but the Velcro strips look better, so I broke them out here. I cut a couple of them up to get more usage out of them. As you can see, I've got the mouse plugged into the keyboard, obviously, since that's extremely convenient, and then the mouse is right here. Now, while I was setting things up last night, I found myself actually trying to pull the mouse a little bit farther away than I've even allowed it to go. But for the most part, when the mouse is just sitting here, this looks way better. When you're just starting a song, this looks way better. So I'm gonna leave that for now. As you can see, I've got the Apple Pro speakers on the left and right. I've been listening to these things this morning while I was cleaning up the apartment a bit because I knew I was gonna be showing a little bit wider of a shot here. And I'll talk a little bit more about that toward the end. But yeah, I've got the Pro speakers. One of them I do have facing away, sort of into the room. And if you're an audiophile, you're probably going to cringe at this because speakers are supposed to be sort of pointed at you in an equilateral triangle in order to get the best sound out of them. And I've got them pointed in completely separate directions. Like I said though, I've been listening to them all morning and they are quite sufficient the way that they are. This isn't supposed to be to sit down and listen to music. You know, there's no chair here. You're not gonna be sitting here watching or listening to anything. This is for when you're just around the apartment doing other things. And we've got one speaker to fill the kitchen with sound and then another speaker to fill the quote-unquote office with sound. And the speakers are doing a really good job of filling up this entire space. Now, when I walked into the other room over there, I really couldn't hear them all that well, but that's more because the apartment has decent walls, not because the speakers are bad. Within this room, they sound absolutely great in this orientation, so I'm quite happy with that. And this also avoids, you know, since they're a little bit more spread apart, it avoids, like I said, too much clutter. The speaker sitting there on the left is farther back toward the wall than the keyboard even is. So the whole setup just looks very contained. Now if I tilt the screen down a bit here, which it's awesome that we can do this, and we kind of peek back behind the machine, you can see that's where I used most of the Velcro strips. They are holding the power cable in. It is coiled up nice and tightly and it's plugged in to one of those power outlets right behind the machine. So I actually didn't realize that there was even a power outlet back there. I had forgotten. I was kind of imagining it plugging in on this power outlet and having a cord going over there. But there's no cable because there's a power outlet right behind it. It looks incredible. Very just integrated with the room, you know. Now one other thing that is very big, even though it didn't take me very long, for some reason, and it's not like I didn't try before, but you can see that brown Ethernet cable that I had stretching from my switch, which is way over there behind the PC. It was stretching all this way on the ground and it was coming up onto the counter, and that wasn't the main problem. The main problem is actually that it's a 100-foot Ethernet cable, so I had a ton of slack coiled up in the middle that was more of a mess than the actual cable coming onto the counter. I was imagining myself just nicely tying up that Ethernet cable and having the slack just sit somewhere, maybe under the desk over there toward the beginning of it. And I was imagining that cable coming up and onto the counter and being plugged into the iMac all the time. Like I said in a previous part, I don't like to use flash drives. It would be inconvenient to use a flash drive here because I'm not sure if a flash drive would even work plugged into the Apple keyboard hub because they don't always. In some of my other Apple keyboards with hubs, flash drives are a no-go. And then obviously the USB ports on the machine itself, the incredibly slow USB 1.1 ports are way back there, so it would be, you know, fiddling and reaching and getting the cables out of where they're supposed to be every single time I wanted to add any music to this thing. And I don't update my music library very often, but when I do, I need it to be relatively painless because otherwise I just won't do it. Like I said, last night one of the things I did also was I sat at my main computer and organized my music library. There are a couple of newer albums that I hadn't properly tagged and gotten cleaned up so that Elisa and VLC and, you know, the music players that I use on my Linux computers and my Android phone can read all of them properly and look nice. So I was planning on keeping Ethernet plugged in so that I could hop onto this thing whenever I wanted to via FTP, which is how I was accessing it yesterday. Well, I'm very pleased to say I actually got Wi-Fi working. And I don't have a recording of that process, and I don't really want to touch it right now that it is working. But basically, I went in and I used the diagnostic wizard in the airport settings. I guess I can show you that. By the way, you can see there's an LED light on the bottom right corner of the screen that's sort of pulsing on and off right now because I had the machine in sleep mode. I had no clue there was an LED in there. And once again, that's one of the things I have always liked about Apple products is when they put LEDs in, whether it's an aluminum machine and they poke the tiny little holes so you can't see where the LED is going to be coming out of, or if it's a plastic machine, it's a little easier because they can hide it just right behind the translucent plastic. But the LEDs are always non-noticeable. You just don't see them at all when the machine is powered off and when the LEDs aren't on. And that LED is actually symmetrical with the microphone pinhole on the other side. I was thinking that microphone pinhole looked kind of strange where it was, and the LED's not exactly centered either, vertically there on the bezel, but the LED and the microphone pinhole at least match each other, so that's good. So I'm gonna go ahead and unsleep this thing. And here we have iTunes running. And at this point, I'm gonna put the camera on the tripod for a minute or two. And we'll get everything as lined up as we can here. Now I'm gonna minimize iTunes, and we're gonna open up the system preferences. And I'm gonna show you what I did because the Wi-Fi, it was interesting. The things that I was seeing online made it sound like it was an issue with WPA2, which is the current prominent standard for authenticating on wireless networks. WPA3 is sort of published, but it's not really being used a whole lot yet. Now, plain old WPA is quite old, and most routers have a setting to allow either authentication via WPA2 or via WPA for older, less secure clients. Now, I mentioned I didn't really want to compromise the security of the rest of my network just for one machine, so I didn't want to switch my settings, which once again, my router doesn't do any wireless. The wireless access point is my computer, which is running Linux, and I'm using the KDE Network Manager applet to set up a hotspot, and that's how I'm connecting all my wireless devices to the internet. I didn't want to change the setting on there from WPA2 to WPA2. However, when I went to actually do it, just to try it out, when I was realizing that I really didn't want cables sitting on the counter here, what I found was that I actually already had my access point set to WPA2. So it already would have accepted a client authenticating with the regular old WPA protocol. Now, just like I mentioned before, just like with the SSL TLS stuff, just because you support WPA2 doesn't necessarily mean you support all the same cryptographic algorithms that might be used between a client and a server, and I assumed that that was the issue. However, I couldn't figure out how to I wanted it to just use regular old WPA then instead of WPA2, which earlier in the video I had a point where it was kicking me back to WPA and not letting me use WPA2 here on the iMac G4. I couldn't figure out how to replicate that, but what I did was, if we come down here, I was looking a lot in the advanced settings. They did not do anything for me. What I ended up doing was clicking Assist Me down here, and then up here we've got, do you need assistance setting up a new network connection or solving a network problem? And well, I'm solving a network problem, so I clicked Diagnostics. It says if you need help solving a problem with your network connection, click Diagnostics, so that's what I did. The Diagnostic Wizard asked me to choose a network. I chose my network. And then it asked me for the password, and I chose the password, and it said, okay, do you want to use DHCP or manual? I clicked DHCP for automatic IP address and all that. And lo and behold, when I used the Diagnostic Wizard and it was going one step at a time, it connected. It did not ask me for a username because it was not trying to force me onto the enterprise version of WPA like it was before. It just asked me for my WPA personal password, the pre-shared key. And I typed it in and it connected. And as you can see, Airport is currently on. Actually, it's not connected to a network right now. All right, well, let's try connecting to my network because this was part of what I was also going to demonstrate in a minute here. So we kind of need it to work. Authenticating, it says up in the top right. That's an interesting interface. And all right, so this is basically what it was doing before. It was just not authenticating. Let's try the wizard again. All right, so we're going to go Diagnostics. Airport. It says failed. So we're going to go NOTS wireless is the network we want to join. And I'll click continue. Hopefully it'll work again so you can kind of see the process here. Network change detected. Yeah, so every step it says network change detected. Your network settings have changed. Click OK to proceed to the next step. And so I just keep clicking OK. Password. So as you can see, once again, it's not asking me for a username. It's just asking me for the pre-shared key, which I will type in there and click continue. All right, and once again, it's asking me if I want to use DHCP or point-to-point protocol over Ethernet, which of course I'm using DHCP. I'll click continue. Your internet connection appears to be working correctly. Okay, I think it went through one or two more steps the first time, but at this point, as you can see over on the left, airport is now marked as connected. If I quit out of here, it still says authenticating, but it will actually work this time. Boy, that that display is very, I just noticed how obscured everything was by the artifact there. I think we are already connected at this point. It still says authenticating. If I open up Safari though, you can see we do load apple.com, and we're not connected to Ethernet right now. It's very slow loading apple.com, but it does load. So we are connected to wireless. We technically have internet, even though internet isn't what I wanted to use. What I wanted to use was just the home network portion so that I can once again transfer files onto here. Now if we come into sharing in our settings, this is where all the magic happens in terms of sharing. I used to use, my first home-hosted web server was a PowerMac G3, and it was so easy to enable a web server because Apache is actually included in macOS, and we can, actually I'm not sure if it's Apache in particular. For some reason I think it is, but there is a web server included in macOS, and we can just check web sharing and we'd have a web server running on this machine. But as you can see, the two that I have selected are file sharing and remote login. File sharing, if you go down to options, it lets you choose what protocol to use. Now, SFTP is not an option, but we can use AFP, that's Apple File Protocol, which is going to work for sharing with other Macs. The one that I've chosen is share files and folders using FTP. Now you can see the downside there is that FTP logins and data transfers are not encrypted. Once again, because it's not SFTP, which runs over SSH, and it's also not FTPS, which is the version of FTP that uses encryption. There is a third option to use SMB. Now, as you can see, SMB, it's a little bit more secure. This is the Windows option, also known as Samba in the Linux world. Samba is an implementation of SMB. And SMB, it says sharing with SMB stores your password in a less secure manner. However, it's still probably more secure on the wire than FTP. To be quite honest, I'm not sure what SMB looks like on the wire. I haven't done packet traces. I don't know if SMB is encrypted. I would assume it is though, since they don't have a warning that it's not encrypted. Now, since I use Linux on my other computers, SMB is a pain. It does work. I can use SMB. It's easier to use than things like MTP for Android devices plugged in. But FTP is still way easier because I can just type in this address, ftp://10.42.0.64. If I type this into my file manager, Dolphin, over on my Linux machine, then it prompts me for a username and password, and then I see my own home folder. I can access the root of the drive. When I connect via FTP, I can get to everything once I'm logged in. As you can see, I shared the music folder and I set it so that Jacob, me, when I'm authenticated, I can read and write. Everyone else, if somebody managed to break in, they can read my music, but they can't mess with my music because they don't have write access. However, this shared folders thing does not affect FTP. When you've got FTP access enabled, then it's just the entire drive that is available to you, kind of like SFTP. Speaking of SFTP, if I come down to remote login, this is an SSH server. And Apple calls it remote login, but it is actually just an SSH server. Now, I showed earlier that the terminal on macOS doesn't have all the same commands that a Linux user would necessarily expect. However, it does still use similar commands some of the time, and I don't really care about the commands because I'm not going to be SSHing in here to actually run commands. But what SSH allows me to do is, because the SSH protocol includes file transfer capability, that means number one, I can also, instead of using FTP if I want to, I can use SFTP. So we can connect, I could theoretically just disable regular FTP altogether, and SFTP and SSH is going to be more secure since it's secure. Secure shell is what SSH stands for. So that works beautifully. Now, the other thing SSH lets me do is actually access this machine not only using SFTP, but also SSHFS, which stands for SSH File System. That's something that I've done a video on before. And I am going to grab the camera off the tripod again. And we're going to come over here to my main machine, and I'm just going to shaky cam show you real quick how well this works once everything is set up. So I've got my Dolphin directory here where I keep all of my mount points for mostly network stuff. I also have my ZFS array in there, and then I've got a terminal open. So this is an Arch Linux machine running KDE Plasma. I'm going to type in SSHFS Jacob at 10.42.0.64, which I believe was the IP address, and then a :/home. Actually, I'll just do slash because I don't think home. It's /users with a capital U, but we're just going to do the root of the drive. So we're going to mount that to /mnt/iMac G4, which is the directory that I created and gave myself permissions to specifically for accessing this thing. We're being asked for a password, so I'll type in the not very secure anyway password that I set on that thing, and we are logged in. So if I come down here now in Dolphin, I can go to iMac G4, and this is the root of our drive. You can see there is a home folder here, and it is empty. And this is going to be a little bit slow since we're going over Wi-Fi, and it's such an old machine with a slower hard drive. 7400 RPM, but it is IDE. As you can see, the home folder is empty. It might have just created that because I attempted to mount it the first time. But if we scroll down a little bit, we've got users, and then we've got it is Jacob and not Jacob Kaufman, because as we remembered, I customized my username on initial setup. And in here, I've got the contents. You can see that send registration file that we saw on the iMac G4 earlier. We are browsing the iMac G4, and this is so great. Earlier last night I guess, I was using this to drag some downloads in when I was figuring out how to get all my music files working that I'll talk about. And then if we come back out here, obviously the music itself, whenever I want to add more music, I just make sure I'm connected up with SSHFS, and then I click in here. I've got a folder that I named called library, and then I've got my music collection, which I've talked about in previous videos. My music collection is interesting because it's about 50% stuff that I bought when I was a kid and never listened to anymore. And then over the past couple of years, I've slowly been listening to music more often and building up a bit of a collection of things I do listen to, but I've still got it all just mixed together in my library. So shuffle doesn't really work for me on a global basis. But yeah, it's that easy. This is incredible, and this is easier than it would be on an old Windows machine because Mac OS is based on BSD, Unix, its Darwin kernel is based on BSD originally, and even though it has diverged quite a bit, we still have some common points like SSH. So I just wanted to show you that because I think it's so cool how this is the same way, on a very regular basis. When I'm sitting here at my computer, I use SSHFS. I've pretty much always got my servo workstation there mounted here. And when I'm buying new music, one of the things that I do once it's ready, I copy it via SSHFS to the servo, and then I copy it via FTP or SFTP to my Android phone, because once again, that's easier also than MTP on Linux. So the same way I was already doing it for my Linux setup over here, it's going to work for that Mac way over there, and it's wireless. Obviously, I don't like to have wireless signals going all the time, but when the machine's powered off, it's not going to be connected to wireless. And you can see it disconnected itself when it was in sleep mode there. But when I want to, the point is I can do it. I don't have to worry about, I need to get the flash drive and I need to make sure it's formatted in something that Linux can write and Mac OS can read. Or I don't have to worry about dragging an Ethernet cable across an entire room. I can just turn the machine on, make sure it's connected to Wi-Fi, walk over there to my other computer, and drag the music over. It's that easy. So I am very happy with that, as you can probably tell. And then back here on the iMac, make sure we're at an okay zoom level to where it's not going to be distorted for you guys. It's hard to tell on the camera's viewfinder. So I'm going to pull the mouse and keyboard just a little bit further away since I've got a camera here in the corner with me. So there were a couple more roadblocks I hit last night that I did have to go through to figure out how to get my music working in iTunes. Now at this point, it is looking great. You can see I completely forgot about cover flow. I like iTunes because it's got an album grid, which I've talked about before. When I'm looking at Linux music players these days, album grid is the must for me. You need to have a way for me to scroll through all of the cover art for my different albums and navigate this way. I don't like these lists. You know, I'm looking at a list and it's a bunch of text. Obviously I can read and see what things say and I can narrow things down, but that's not as fun as just, you know, I know what the picture looks like for what I'm trying to actually listen to. Once again, very weird collection I've got, a mix of children's music and less children's music, but that's what I've got. Now this is looking really great. It took me a little while to get there. One of the issues I was having was that I was having duplicated albums in the grid view here, and you can see I've got some albums that are supposed to have more than one entry. Some of these albums have multiple discs, and even though there are a couple of albums that I do separate out using the disc number metadata, and I'm actually realizing one of the ones I was about to use as an example is actually missing, so I'll have to go and see what the deal there is. But here's one that I know has multiple discs. This one should display. Okay, so yeah, I'm still figuring out iTunes. It's really, you know, even on Linux, it's difficult to deal with metadata. Now, as you can see here, this album has 2 discs, and this is where the second disc begins. But iTunes just shows 1 through 23 songs. It doesn't start its counting over at 14. Now, if I come back up to a different album that I know also has 2 discs, this one starts at 1, it goes to 22, and then second disc starts, it goes back to 1 and it's counting. So iTunes is not immune. You know, people say, if I talk just about my problems on Linux with my music players, people might think that's a Linux specific issue, but tagging your music is a pain in the butt no matter what OS you're using. Oh, here's the one that I was looking for. iTunes ignored the T in the when it was alphabetizing this, which none of the Linux music players that I've used do. As you can see, this is an album I actually made myself. It's quite short, but it's 2 discs. It's got 7 songs on the first disc, and then the second one starts back at 1. So that's why the numbers are like that on some of these albums. But then other albums, I do just have it separated out so that this is disc 1, this is disc 2. We've got 1, 2, 3. The Portal 2 soundtrack up here. Each of those volumes is showing up separately, and I could combine them if I really wanted to. I'm more concerned with not having anything that doesn't have cover art. That's my primary concern, and then just making sure things are consistent within franchises, basically. But I did have some songs that were missing, and I also had some that were split up between different albums. Now, what I found was that iTunes, it's actually kind of annoying how iTunes sorts things, because I have my music tagged properly so that KDE Elisa on my Linux machine and VLC on my phone can both browse through albums correctly. And by correctly, I mean if you've got an album and has 1 entry, you go into that entry and it lists all the songs on the album. It doesn't seem that difficult, right? Doesn't seem that complicated of a concept, but Apple decided to overcomplicate things, and I believe this was new in iTunes 10 or maybe iTunes 8 or 9. It wasn't always this way. If you've got an album, here's how KDE Elisa splits albums up in the album view, is if 2 songs have the same album name, then they're part of the same album. It's that easy in KDE Elisa, because if they've got the same album name, it's the same album. If you've got 2 different albums with the same name, you know, you're going to have to edit the tags for one of them so that the name is slightly different on the second one if you don't want them to show up together. Because the default is it doesn't make sense to have more than 1 album called exactly the same thing. How iTunes did it was a little bit different because Apple thinks differently. And first, it separated out by album name. Second, it's separated out by artist. Now let that sink in. So if you've got an album with more than 1 artist, then you're basically screwed, because iTunes, if you've got an album that has more than 1 artist on it, then it would separate that out into 2 different albums with the same picture, the same album name, and then if you go into one of them, you would see just the songs from one artist. If you go into the other one, it would show just the songs from the other artist, which, you know, that's not what people want when they're browsing albums. I don't understand why they thought that that was correct. For instance, we've got my album that I just mentioned that I made, and I made this last year, toward the end of 2019 was when it was finished. Now, most of these songs are made by me. There was 1 guest track from a different person. So what iTunes was doing was it was showing 2 entries, both had the same cover art, both had the same name. One of them had me listed as the artist, the other one had the guest artist listed. And if I double-clicked on one of them, then I would be missing 1 track because it was only the songs that I made. And if I double-clicked on the other one, it was an album with only a single song from that guest artist. Leave a comment down below. I don't solicit comments anymore because I'm normally not too interested in reading them these days, but I'm very interested to know, does anybody watching this video actually listen to their music like that? Like, oh, I want to listen to this album, but only the songs from artist XYZ. If you want to listen to an artist, you would go to Artist View, right? I just don't understand why they would think, I mean, it's legitimate to only want to listen to songs by a particular artist, but there's an artist view for that. Album view should be for album sorting. So the workaround that I found, it was super easy, and I was overcomplicating it at first, going through and fixing all of them individually, but what I ended up doing was Command A to select all albums. We control click and click Get Info, and that brings up our multiple item information screen. And iTunes will warn you the first time that you're editing multiple items at the same time. I checked the box to not warn me anymore. Now, most of these things are blank because they don't match between all of my different songs. But what I did was I set the album artist, and this isn't the artist for the tracks. So if I go into an album, which I can't do while this dialog's open, but if we go into an album, you just saw the artist still displayed correctly. And it was different for some of the different tracks. But the album artist, this is a difference between how iTunes sorts things and how KDE Elisa sorts things. And Elisa's not a black sheep in this, because Lollipop, Quadlibet, back when Banshee was still around, it worked the same way, and VLC on my phone, all of the common Linux music players work like this, where if the album artist is blank, then it does not take any artist or album artist into account when separating out the albums. Now, KDE Elisa, to be perfectly fair, if the album artist is different between two tracks, then it does separate the albums out. That was one of the things that I when I go through and I have to fix the tags for music that I downloaded from places other than iTunes. And these are legitimate downloads a lot of the time too. And the tags are just a mess, and I have to make them compatible with my software. In KDE Elisa, if you've got an album that has some tracks from one album artist and some tracks from another album artist, that's the difference in Elisa between an artist and an album artist, is the artist, you can have more than one artist in an album. As far as Elisa is concerned, you cannot have more than one album artist in an album. So if you want to split up two different albums that are named the same thing, which there's a lot of music out there, so maybe you've got two albums from two different people who named their album the same thing. That's fine. Just set the album artist tag and it will separate those albums out. However, in Elisa, if you blank out the album artist, then it says, okay, we will not sort albums by artist, which is how I expect things to work. iTunes, it does it the other way. It goes the other direction, where if the album artist is blank, then it basically just uses each track's individual artist as that track's album artist, and it assumes that if a track has this artist, the album artist is the same. It doesn't assume blank means that you don't want to sort by that. It assumes that a blank album artist on a track means that that track's artist was also the album artist, and then it separates things out. So what you can do is just Command A, select all, edit, and set the album artist to various artists for all of your music. And for me, this does exactly what I wanted to do, because I don't actually have any albums that are named the same thing that are actually two separate albums. I don't have any of those. If I did, I would edit the album name, and I would do that for myself anyway, so it's easier to read, And so the only side effect this has, setting your album artist to various artists for your entire library, is that when we're here in the grid view and when we're in cover flow, you can see that the artist listed is various artists for everything. However, as you can also see down here, the actual artist entry, it's still preserved, because all we did was we changed the album artist. We did not change the actual artist for each individual track. We changed the album artist for each individual track, and so iTunes sorts things properly. So that was one thing out of the way. And then I made myself a little text document. I thought about grabbing iWork, like an old version, but I just used text edit for now. If we open this up, so here's whenever I get new music, the basically steps that I want to remember, and it's pretty simple. So copy files from Impulse Workstation, that's my main machine, to iMac G4, to run entire library directory through XLD to convert all FLAC files to AIFF files. So I noticed some of my music was still missing after I got the album sorting situation fixed. I didn't notice that it was missing because I just assumed that it was because of the splitting why I wasn't seeing everything. But once I got all of that album artist stuff figured out, I still had this situation where some of my music was missing. I think that this entire directory was missing, in fact, for my own album. And I figured out that the reason was because Mac OS 10.5 Leopard can't play FLAC files natively. And there are third-party programs you can download to play FLAC files. You can get an older version of VLC that runs on this machine and plays FLAC files. But I wanted it in iTunes. And when I found out that this was an issue, it was funny. My first instinct was to go back to my other computer, and I did a web search for Elisa Homebrew Mac, because I wanted to see if I could get KDE Elisa running on this thing. It's open source, so theoretically maybe we can compile it for PowerPC. However, I didn't find very much promising stuff there. Elisa is barely supported on Homebrew on newer Intel Macs, and the only PowerPC fork of Homebrew that I found did not have an Elisa recipe. And then I started looking up Linux distributions that can run on PowerPC Macs. I checked if I could get Ubuntu Mate or something running on here. You know, that's how little attached I am to Mac OS, is that I'm perfectly comfortable. You know, this looks cool, it looks fine. But I'd be fine having Ubuntu Mate on here too if I can run KDE Elisa and have the tags work properly and all my music detected and still have the hardware work just for playing music, then I'd be happy with that. However, Ubuntu has dropped PowerPC support, so have most other distros at this point, so that wasn't an option. So the only other option then to get music actually showing up in iTunes, which was what I was intending to use in the first place. Like I said, I'm not tied to it. I was fine with ditching it for Elisa if that was possible, but since it's not, we needed to convert those files. So there's a program called XLD, and I tried a couple of other things first. There was also a program called Fluke, which reportedly was able to make iTunes play FLAC files. However, it did not work on this version of iTunes. I think it's a minor revision or two new. So XLD, it's not going to open up an interface by default. But if we come into preferences, here's the preferences I set in here. So output format, AIFF, it's Apple's format. There's also an Apple lossless option. I thought AIFF was lossless, similar to Wave, although AIFF can have metadata. I put the output directory the same as input, add encoded files to iTunes if possible into the library, and iTunes is good at removing duplicates or hiding them or showing you them so that you can remove them. So I wasn't too worried about having duplicate track entries in iTunes. Over here in the batch section, I put restrict files to open with extension FLAC. So it's only going to convert the FLAC files. If I've got MP3 files, those are already, compressed, and this machine can already play them. I don't want to convert them again into a larger file format. So we're only going to convert FLAC files. So with those settings, what I can do, and the rest of this doesn't really matter, I did check add tags to output files if possible so that all the tagging I had gone through the hard work of doing on my main machine would carry over to the new files. And then I also put load cover art. All of my files, I do make sure the cover art's embedded in the file itself, but then since some players handle that better than others, I also make sure I've got either a cover.jpg or cover.png. And I'm not sure if this program is case sensitive or not, but I went ahead. The default was just cover.jpg and then these folder.jpgs. But I added a cover with a capital C, and then I also added the PNG ones. But also don't overwrite if there's already an embedded image in the track. The compilation flag, I checked to set that automatically just because I was trying to get iTunes to stop ungrouping things when I was figuring that out, and then preserve unknown metadata. Even if this program doesn't know what a tag is for, I probably put it there for a reason, so I want to preserve that stuff. And obviously, this is not going to be the master copy of my music. The master copy on my other machine isn't going to get transcoded into AIFF, but what we can do with those settings is I open up XLD, I click on File, Open, and then it lets me select an entire directory. I can click on that, I click Open, and what it did, I can run it again. It's probably not going to do anything because there would be no FLAC files anymore because I selected the option to delete the original files after converting. But what it did the first time was it went through, it found all the FLAC files, it converted them to AIFF. That worked beautifully. So XLD, I'd highly recommend it. FLV is my preferred file format for music these days because it's lossless, it is compressed, and it does support tags. So you get the best of everything with FLAC. So if you're like me and you're starting to keep more and more music in FLAC and you're trying to do a project like this, XLD is what I'd recommend. There was one other one that I also saw exact or exact, but that one also did not really work for me. I needed something that would do it in a batch because I needed to do that whole, the library and all of its subdirectories at one time, which XLD does wonderfully. That actually didn't take care of all of them. I actually had one album. It's the newest one that I added to my library. It was in OGG format. And of course, macOS 10.5 did not support OGG either. OGG is a free format. It is lossy compression like MP3. And yeah, this machine simply couldn't play it. I couldn't actually find any option for converting those on the iMac. And I thought about converting on my main machine for the FLAC files, but that would have been a lot of FLAC files. Sound Converter, which is the conversion program I normally use on Linux, I'm not sure if it can do subdirectories like XLD can. But for the one album I had, I'm 99% positive I don't have any other OGG files in my library. The one album that was all OGGs, I just opened that one up. Since it's so easy, I can browse in Dolphin on my Linux machine. Using SSHFS, it's a Fuse mounted file system, so it's just like any other directory on my main machine. I can right-click in that album's directory, open with Sound Converter, and I just converted those. I think I converted those to MP3 since they were already in OGG, and I didn't want to make the file sizes too much larger. So yeah, that's a lot of information, but that's what I had to do. I don't have the OGG written down here. I'm sure I'll regret that in the future. I'm going to forget that it doesn't play OGGs, but it was simple to figure out, and it was a one-off thing. And then, yeah, so after I do that, we're going to open up Album Grid anytime I add new music and make sure the album artist is set to various artists to disregard the regular artist field in album sorting. And then there were also still a number of items that were missing cover art. It's interesting because some of them were songs that are from my own iTunes library, that I've added myself. Some of them were from iTunes, though, originally, way back in the day when I was running Windows and using iTunes more regularly. So it was seemingly just kind of random. It was maybe 10, I'd say around 10 albums throughout my library that were missing their cover art. And for that, it's super easy. And it was really interesting because the files had the cover art embedded in them. iTunes evidently does not care about the cover.jpg files like some other programs do, but if you go into an album and click Get Info, down here, this artwork space, you just double click on that and it opens up a dialog box. There's another way, you can do it track by track and it's more obvious. There's an Add Art button. But for doing an entire album at once from the grid here, you just double click on that blank space and then it lets you open up an image file, and then it sets that image in iTunes' own database to that track for all of the tracks in that album. So that is everything I had to do to get my music sorted. So that was great. And yeah, finally, I'll just show you, like I said, I know the audio is not great in this video because it's an echoey place. The apartment as a whole is still kind of empty-ish. But yeah, I'm gonna take the camera off of the tripod since I've talked and shown you everything that I possibly could have shown you at this point. And just to demonstrate the entire system in action, I'm holding the camera with my good hand. It's a critical mistake. There we go. You can always do Control L in the cover flow. And yeah, I forgot about cover flow. I loved 3D, like cool little features like that. Looks like the camera decided to change the white balance there. There we go. I loved all the little bells and whistles, and cover flow was one of the things I used to. I really loved it on my iPod Touch, and I really wanted a Mac to be able to do it on a computer. I think you could do it on Windows iTunes as well. But yeah, I'd forgotten about some of that. So just to demonstrate, we can start playing and we can turn the volume up a bit. And just to show you how full the sound is, I know the quality's not going to be great on this microphone. I didn't want to split the sound up too much. Like I said, the speakers are theoretically supposed to be in a triangle pointing toward you. But in terms of how much bass we're hearing compared to how much there should be, and just the fullness of the sound in general, these two tiny little desktop speakers, one of them is really close to a wall, but they do a great job of filling up the entire place with sound. Like I'm over here, this is the other side of the room, I'm by my computer, and I can still hear it perfectly fine. And they get louder too. I don't want to annoy anybody else in the apartment complex. And of course that's copyrighted music, so we're already more than halfway through. And then just to demonstrate, you know, if you just want to listen to something in particular, there's also a search. So yeah, I'm really happy with how this project turned out. I'm glad I had the idea to use it as a jukebox, because even if I don't have people over, you know, ever. So it's not like I have guests I need to entertain, and I don't listen to music myself all that often either, but maybe I will a little bit more often now, since I have a computer that's dedicated purposes to do that. So yeah. Guys, I know this has been a very, very long video. Here, I'll put the camera back on the tripod for the sign off. Okay, I guess I'm going back here. Camera angles. Alright guys, I know this has been a very, very long video, and I want to thank everyone who stuck through it. If you stuck through it, then you probably like this sort of longer vlog style thing. It was kind of fun to record, and it was fun to do this project. In addition to just being fun to mess with the computer itself, it also spurred me to get a little bit more cleaned up with the whole apartment in general. I hung up some things that I've had for a while but haven't had a chance to put anywhere since I moved in here. And obviously now that this is done, I've got a counter space back again. It's not taken up by old dusty computer parts. I know the video wasn't as technical as some of my other stuff, but you know, this is what being a nerd is kind of all about, is getting really into projects and things like that, just because you like the project itself. So thanks again for watching. Nerdonthestreet.com is where you can find all my other content. I'm going to try and get this video out this weekend, since I know my videos have been pretty slow and they are going to stay that way. And the next couple videos will probably be a little bit more technical, but for now, iMac G4 everybody, very happy with it. So I'm Jacob Kaufman, the Nerd on the Street, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye.